Well, welcome everybody to the select board meeting on Tuesday, November 29th. I'm Barney Arnold, the chair, and I'll be chairing remotely because of health issues. And in the room, we have Kate Reed and David Modell and Travis Snell, members of the board. Nathan Brown will not be attending tonight. And we also have Ryan McLean and Aubrey Thomas, our town administrator and assistant town administrator. Let me quickly review the agenda. And after community input, we are pleased to hear from the governance task force and their report after a long, hard bit of work. And then that'll be followed by the Environmental Sustainability Committee, which also has produced a discussion document for us. And then we'll be interviewing two firms, possibly to do the police chief search with us. And then the Transfer Station Action Committee will be coming before us, followed by the town administrator's report. Three ARPA requests that we'll be considering. And then finally, appointments and resignations, including the appointment of the screening committee for the police chief. And finally, the dog nuisance hearing discussion and a review of the warrants. So with that, I will just go right into the meeting and ask if there is anyone in the room or remotely that would like to offer any comments during community input. If so, if you're in the room, just raise your hand to be acknowledged. Is that Vanessa, I see?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vanessa, would you go up to a mic and let us know who you are and make your comments? Thanks. That's Vanessa Maroney.
Hello, Vanessa Maroney, Bedford Road. Does it sound okay? Yeah. So I just have a couple of quick comments on the agendas and how meetings are noticed. I've noticed some inconsistencies and more so some troubling sort of lack of information that's on the agendas. So the first item was from the agenda from November 15th, where the 8th agenda item for 9:10 p.m. was quote, dog nuisance discussion, which doesn't have a lot of detailed information at all. It is very difficult for the public to understand what this topic is, what dog this is pertaining to, what part of town, or any of that. And for members of the community that would like to be engaged and understand what is happening with public safety issues, that's really important. I actually reached out to the office of the select board on Sunday, the 13th, and asked specifically what this was pertaining to, and there was no response. And then I saw in the mosquito that it was covered in quite a lot of detail, that it was about the dangerous dog. Now, you had a hearing in September of 2021 where you literally went through the process to determine if this dog should be determined a nuisance dog or a dangerous dog. The board determined that the dog would be deemed a dangerous dog. So this, in my opinion, is not properly noticed. It did not give the public an opportunity to know exactly what was going on. And I do think that the Attorney General's office would not appreciate this lack of information. So I missed that whole discussion. And I think the last time that I was here giving some public comments, it was about that. So I tried to be engaged and I couldn't. And I would actually say that for your agenda item for tonight, which is 9:50 p.m. Dog nuisance hearing discussion, is this a nuisance dog, or are, again, you going to talk about the dangerous dog on South Street? You need to be specific. And I believe that the law does ask for that. So the other thing about agendas is that it's sometimes the board does this, sometimes they don't. But in terms of appointments, you need to actually list every single person who is being appointed. Sometimes I've noticed that more often lately it's been happening, but if you go back to even like September I don't know, 27th or so. Like you can look back at any random agendas and you'll see appointments and resignations and not always the information of the people listed in there. And so that is actually something that they call out. Even they say even for during annual appointments where it's a whole list, that it's not okay to just to have people look elsewhere for that information. It must be included in the actual notice of the meeting itself. So I would say that, I'm just, if a lot of people aren't being paying attention to the dangerous dog situation, I would say it's because it's very difficult to actually get information about it. And I will remind you that I had reached out to get a police report, a redacted version, and that was declined. And I would wonder how the mosquito gets the information about what happened. It's just questioning why there's not more information. That's all.
Thank you for your input, Vanessa. Is there anyone else that would like to offer input during this time? All right, well, hearing none and seeing no one on the call raising a hand to do input, provide input, I'd like to move on to the item number 2, the Town Governance Task Force report. And I'm not sure who is in the room from the task force. Perhaps you could introduce yourselves. And is Rebecca, are you there, the chair? Yes, you are. Great. Yeah, Rebecca, why don't you and whoever is there from the task force, if you'd like to join her, you may. I know we haven't posted this as a joint meeting, so, and I don't.
We did post a meeting because
we
we heard that he might have quorum and it was believed that we should. So we did post a meeting. So I do.
So would you like to then officially open the meeting for the task force?
Yeah, so I will call the task force meeting to order at 7:09 p.m. And I don't have my phone to tell you the date. November 29th, 2022.
Yeah.
Oh,
Rebecca, how do you want to do this? Would you like to have us turn the screen over to you so you can share the document, or Ryan, are you prepared to put it up, or how do you want to do this?
I can put it up, Bernie.
Okay, great. And I'll say while he's doing that, that to you, Rebecca, and to the rest of the task force members that are there, it's a very impressive document with a lot of, I know how much work you all put into it. And so congratulations to all of you for completing the work, completing the report. Thank you.
Can't see the screen, so I don't know if we're.
Oh, that's a problem.
Well,
Yeah,
I just.
Ryan, will you are you giving Rebecca?
I have a copy, but I just couldn't see if everyone was looking or not.
Everybody at the moment
this is the
seeing
agenda.
Yeah, for tonight, and your report should be next.
So do you have a presentation, or is this the?
No,
report
just the report. I did
Okay.
not prepare a presentation for this.
So is this a Q&A, or would you like to walk through the report? Well, how would you like to do it?
I think more of a Q&A, but I can just say that, we are grateful to have this time and to be here tonight, and are really excited to turn this over and come to the conclusion of this. It's been a long process, and we, started with 2 other members, and so they have since left us, and the getting this final version was a task unto itself, with the remaining having to make forum and such. So anyway, so we are happy to present it and to be coming to the end of our term, which concludes at the end of December officially. So I think just generally, we kind of separated the report into 2 sections. One where we believe that actual town meeting action needs to be taken. So bylaws passed, or town meeting take some other action. And then other just kind of more general recommendations that that we think that the town should consider, explore further. Or there were a couple of things that I think we just didn't really expand on enough to provide a recommendation or suggestions of that should be further fleshed out. So
Let me echo what Barney said. I found it very comprehensive, well-written. I personally agreed with quite a few of the conclusions, so commend you guys for that work. I see my colleagues have marked copies, so probably I'll just step in, Barney, since I'm here. Probably best to go kind of page by page and let people, sort of those who have comments about things, I guess, weigh in. So you want to start, Kate? You've got highlights.
Well, I have, I did read it. Twice, actually. And I made, notes to myself of things that I thought the select board should be discussing and taking up. And I, rather than page by page, I'd like, maybe to start with that, if that's okay with
Sure.
everybody else. One was the, let me see, I'll just read the paragraph because I don't know how else to summarize it. The task force has contemplated several iterations of the potential warrant article for the budget process.
Kate, can you tell us what page you're on
I'm on page 9.
of the actual
Yeah,
report?
9 of the report, sorry,
Yeah,
because,
okay. Okay,
and it's on revise the budget process.
yeah, hang on one
And-
second. We're just getting there. Hang on a second.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
okay, but for those people who don't have the report in front of them,
No, it's on the screen.
oh, it's on the screen, okay.
Yeah.
So it's we're on page 9, yes, but I'm on page 9 and the screen is on page 7.
9 of the report.
I'm at revise the budget process.
Yeah, but I want page.
Sure.
Yeah, that top paragraph. Yeah, the task force has contemplated several iterations of the potential warrant article. The language could be deleted or modified, et cetera. What basically my note to myself was that we have to discuss this whole thing and we have to discuss it soon. We're already started a budget process. It looks like we've actually already initiated some of these things. And I think we need to have a way of tracking some of these changes and seeing what is going to
right.
work. What works
So
and
let's
what's not.
step up a level to that. I think, it probably is useful. I agree that, everybody knows I'm a spreadsheet guy, so I was thinking columns, but basically you've identified a bunch of recommendations. And I agree, we should probably review. It strikes me, Ryan, that quite a few of these are already in process. You've taken on. I mean, you should comment, but my impression of reading this is that quite a few of these initiatives. Progress has started. Would you say that's correct?
Yes, at the direction of the board, the finance committee and others, we are working through implementing some of these, and I would say it's a decent test run for people who wanted to see it in action before voting on it at town meeting.
Right, and I think that the phrase test run is not bad. To your point, Kate. On your particular point of the budget, I think we made a decision that we would sort of do half the step, right? We would have the town administrator corral the entire town side budget, which is
Right.
consistent with task force recommendation. Working with FinCom, which you've noted has been not always a willing participant, but agreed with, I think, us that we would start that process. So I think it's a fair, in my opinion, it's a fair next step to take all of these recommendations, evaluate which ones we have started and where we are in
Yeah.
starting and what that means. For example, that one, we felt it was a 2-year process, right? So we're going to try it because we're in the middle of a budget process and hopefully learn some things and then be prepared for the following budget to go with whatever the full
Right.
process is. Some other ones, I think Ryan and Aubrey have taken on their own to do.
Yeah.
HR things. and
The
so
HR
forth.
thing, in fact, I have,
Right.
again, a note on my pages that I said, I think this we need to have. I also kind of tried to say like long-term, short-term, and the the updating the issues about the personnel board, I think we should try to get ironed out for this spring's town warrant.
And that's a question I
I'm
had.
waiting.
Do we still have a personnel? board?
Yeah.
We do?
I have not met with them.
No.
In name,
No.
in name only.
We
We have,
I
we do
mean, we
not
could-
have one that's active.
yeah,
Right.
we don't have an active one.
And
Okay.
we, if you recall, David, we gave authority to the town administrator to act as the personnel.
That is
Well,
my
but
response.
yes, but the problem is that we have discovered, in
I-
fact, actually, that the governance committee has discovered for us was that we thought we gave that authority to the town administrator through the personnel procedures book, but
policies.
we neglected to change the bylaw
Right.
in accordance. So
Right.
we have to change that bylaw, and that should be
Right,
done.
but I think on that topic, I'll venture an opinion. So I think part of and there's a long section in here about what happened and didn't happen through town meeting. And I was deeply involved in that. And I would just say that I think the end result is a change to bylaw. But if I have I have two criticisms of the process, okay? And I think the work product has gone beyond that, so it's not like you didn't do it right. It just, to me, the two criticisms I have and their lessons learned for the future is deeper buy-in by the affected boards, committees, employees before things come out. And there were reasons why maybe, you were rushed because of the calendar. And the other one is, and this is really pertinent, I think, that bylaw should be the last thing. We should figure out what we're going to do, work out details, and then draft the appropriate bylaws. So in this case, I would say, and the same with the budget one, let's work a process, even at the risk that we're not following
In
bylaws.
this case,
And then
though,
we'll figure out what the bylaw should say.
yeah, but David, in this case, we are already doing this, and so we have to get the bylaw to catch up with what we're doing. We cannot be doing things that are not sanctioned by the bylaw. So if we're doing things that are not, following the bylaw, we either need to stop doing them right
But
away.
how many of those things are we
Well,
actually?
here's
doing?
one.
Maybe 20 or
This-
30?
But this is
Wait,
one,
you guys, excuse me. I am going to chair from afar to the degree that I can, okay? I think we should not get bogged down in this level of detail. I think we owe it to the governance task force to look at the broad categories of changes that they're recommending. And I think maybe I don't know, Rebecca, if it makes sense to have you sort of summarize start with the town meeting proposed changes that you're recommending and just do a very, very quick summary, and then let's open it up for discussion. But I'd like to have an opportunity to sort of look at the whole, from a little bit higher level than you're getting into now. And then we certainly need to have further discussions beyond tonight.
we do, because I don't want this to get put on a shelf.
No, it
Nothing
won't.
Is
It
ever discussed point by point, because I think we do need to discuss these things point by point and decide what we are going to.
No, I
support and what we
completely
don't.
agree, Kate, but I think I would like to see us look at the document as a whole, and if we spend this much time on every
Okay.
piece, we won't have a chance to hear about the whole report from the committee. That's my general point for tonight.
All right, well, I guess I will also say, I thank you. I do know what an uphill battle this has been. And I think you guys came out of this with a very good report with lots of very good recommendations. Some of which we've already obviously agreed with and are trying to work towards before even accepting this report. Thank you again.
So Rebecca, would you mind, does that seem reasonable to have you maybe just take the first section about town meeting changes and just give us a brief overview?
Yep, so I'll flip through as I talk through it, because again, I didn't prepare for kind of doing that kind of a presentation. I was more geared toward the question answer, but so please excuse that part. So the first part, that town meeting action, we start off with the strengthening the role of the town administrator. And so we have asked or recommended for a formal bylaw to be passed that defines that role. We provided a draft that would have been proposed on the warrant had we taken that route. But we chose not to do that. So so we do have some draft language. We didn't want it to go to waste. You know, we worked with council. I'm going to say outside council, town council, to draft that. So we didn't want that lost and to go to waste. So that's included in here. We've suggested that we make the town clerk an appointed position. We have, again, asked for the revision to the budget process to reiterate the existing bylaw. Actually, you know, we believe FinCom can just go right to the departments and not include the town administrator. We think that that has been a problem in the past. So even if you start this informal process where that's working, I would suggest that, and I think I have support here, that you still move forward and formalize in the bylaw that the town administrator will play a role in that process so that it's not lost in time. The designating the human resources person to be one person and not spread out amongst various different people. We did hear quite a bit, I think, on that was a morale issue. And then we go back to the suggestion of having the regularly scheduled fall town meeting in addition to the annual town meeting in order to help with participation and hopefully hear from more folks. I think, what was that? Oh, and then we had other kind of minor, so earlier access to the warrant. So putting it in the bylaws that we will send the warrant out to folks earlier in the calendar. Implement electronic voting. That seems
Already
to,
did.
yep, already been done. The include line item department budgets in the published warrant budget. And then create a standard for, or standardize the governance task force. It's not like, so that it is not 30, is it 25 years in between when the town is evaluating what the structure is. It was, you know, part of the challenge that we had was probably the breadth of what we were expected to review. And so if this, and the amount of time that had passed added to that. And so if there was a recurring governance task force with some relative frequency, hopefully that would not be the case, and they would be able to focus and drill down more deeply. And then I think we were able to in some instances. Create a bylaw to establish a bylaw review committee to make sure that the bylaws are in line with kind of current expectations, laws, and practices, to the extent that the practices change and the bylaws get outdated, update those bylaws. Create a bylaw to require submission of minutes to the clerk for posting online. That's not actually a requirement. And so we think that it should be. We have a bylaw correction. We have a reference to finance director that is in one area of the, I think it's the budget bylaw, and we didn't ever establish a finance director by bylaw. So it seems like that was probably maybe in copy and paste and oversight that it got incorporated in there. So that's just a correction. Consider a bylaw to establish information technology authority. This is one where we felt like some time needed to pass if we have a new IT director, that seeing how that plays out, if we do have one person who's responsible and everybody is cooperating, then a bylaw might actually not be like necessary. But to the extent, if we have areas that are not willingly cooperating, that it might be to our advantage to formalize that. So that is the the short version of all the things that we propose for town meeting action. So questions, discussion?
All right, I thought it was excellent. I want to applaud all of you. I think the work that was done was phenomenal. I particularly like what you didn't mention was some of the takeaways for the next task force and just ideas of, to help the next task force. So that was also, I thought, that's thinking long term. I tend to agree with these. I mean, I think most of them are things that we're already starting to do. And I think it started already with our new TA. And I think if you watch how we as a board, and I guess I shouldn't speak for the board, but, we evaluated and talked about what we may want as a board for the new TA. And I think we maybe collectively just thought that having more authority in a TA to do a lot of these things is the direction that we should head. So I think we're moving that direction. And that said, I guess from a policy standpoint, I think some of these things are best accomplished by not necessarily having a bylaw. For instance, you get into IT and how you're going to direct the town and structure that. I think that could be best done by really ultimately the authority, rests with the residents in this town meeting, but, electing a select board giving more power to the town administrator and the town administrator administering that type of thing. So an IT director 10 years from now, 20 years from now, may not even be a reasonable position because we may have moved on from technology, but we'll still have that bylaw. Whereas I think if you have the authority rest, a little stronger, in the TA, and that covers things like the HR, giving the authority to the TA to then administer and have direction over, the various departments. And I think I would sense that, and maybe Kate, you chime in, or David or Barney, but that we're headed that direction now, just generally. So those are my comments. I mean, there are a couple of I don't know. I'll just end there. I think.
I
Gives-
partially agree with you, and partially don't.
Good.
And I think exactly what the governance committee was saying. They're not saying that we need a bylaw for the IT, for instance. They're saying, though, that if you need additional authority to get some of the initiatives done, then maybe the bylaw will help cement that authority. And by the way, we can still always go back and change the bylaw if you no longer need that later on. But so yes, some things can be just done by procedure, but then and sometimes indeed, you don't want to have it in the bylaw, because then if it's a sort of function that changes a lot, then you don't want that in the bylaw, because you don't want to have to keep on going back to town meeting to change it.
Right.
But if there's, and I'm thinking, anyway, so I'll just leave that at that.
Yeah, can I just speak to to kind of an example?
Yeah.
Is on why we thought it might ultimately, if that it might require a bylaw is, so if we were to determine that there is one kind of platform, I think it was for finance, that was desired to be used across the town, right? And that you have certain departments that are like, no, we use this, we're comfortable with it, right? And those departments, some of them have their own statutory authority, right? So that it would be difficult to force them. I mean, there are ways to do it, right? But through budgeting processes or whatever, but otherwise it would be difficult to force them to come on board to do something that the entire town can use. And so this, if you get that opposition, as you're trying to do that kind of a change, then that would be when it might be necessary to look to a bylaw so that it brings them on board by law.
But that, I mean, that goes to my earlier comment about, bylaw sort of a blunt instrument. I think my personal opinion is one of Carlisle's strengths is that we tend to work pretty cooperatively, right? So if we, for example, if school didn't, and they actually, this is not a correct example because they're perfectly in agreement to a single financial platform. But were they to say, no, I have my situation, to my opinion, it's much more effective if we sit with them, try to understand why they feel that way, induce them to go, and only if we're really at an impasse and we really feel so strongly that we have to use the power of the bylaw to force them, that we can consider doing that. And I would say we should do that rarely, if ever. So I go back to what I was discussing with Kate, and I didn't mean, Barney, to be granular about that particular thing. I was trying to make a more generic argument that we should absolutely take these recommendations to heart. We should work on all of them, which I think we're working on them. And we should, certain ones, and maybe personnel is not the right one, but like the finance process, we should figure out the way it works and make sure when we do go to the bylaw, and we do need to memorialize some of these, that we've already worked out the kinks and that we don't have a poorly written or maybe miswritten. And I don't mean it to you guys, just we may learn things in the trial process that may cause us to change the bylaw. The other thing I would say about bylaws is we don't want to be unnecessarily restrictive. So for example, we now have Aubrey, which we're very happy to have her, but I personally was against codifying thou shalt have an assistant TA in charge of HR, or an HR, I forget. The original version had something like you'll have an HR administrator, because it could be voted down. And then we're sort of constrained. So the bylaws can also be restrictive if they're not properly crafted. And I would say that last example of too much restriction, I do find in mandating a fall town meeting. I think a good best practice would be for us to adopt 2 town meetings. I think the reasons you state are valid. There's plenty of things that are non-budgetary that can go in the fall, but I'm not comfortable with mandating, because we learned, like this time, there simply wasn't enough, there weren't enough substantive issues to merit it. And it's expensive, and we're a little town. So that's why I say, I think in most cases, maybe the personnel is not a good example, but in most cases, my preference would be, let's work through the things and let's figure out, let's have, the goal to make sure that we do have bylaw coverage for the things that we require a bylaw or a bylaw amendment.
On that topic of town meeting, Rebecca, I would appreciate hearing a little more from you or other members of the task force. One about the kind of larger sort of comment or description you provided in the report about from the various surveys and conversations you had, the difficulty people were finding in attending town meeting and the desire to make it easier for people to attend and participate. Other than, and I know you recommend that we try to get information out earlier, the packet, and have more information in the packet so that it's clearer what is going to be voted on. I'm wondering though, if you could say some more about why having a mandatory town meeting in the fall would somehow help with participation and transparency.
I think Brian wants to weigh in on this one.
Hi, guys. Brian Cruz. I don't know if I have to say my address. I guess not, because I'm going to ask first. What I would say is the proposed warrant article doesn't require there to be a town meeting. It requires the select board to open a warrant period for submissions for the fall. If you have no submissions, and if the select board or the planning board or anyone else doesn't have anything to put on, you're not going to hold a town meeting. You're not going to be spending any money. What it does is ensure that people aren't rushing every spring to make sure once a year, if they have any ideas, no matter how ill-conceived or not fully thought out, they have to slam them in through town meeting. It's to allow the public at large multiple opportunities a year to actually think about presenting something at town meeting or the planning board or you guys. So the idea, there's nothing required about having a fall town meeting. It's to ensure a standardization of the process of the warrant being open. And in fact, I think the draft that we have even says the select board can not hold the meeting if they don't get anything to put on. So I don't want it to be misconstrued as something more than simply ensuring that process for creating the warrant exists in the fall as it does in the spring.
Well, I thought that the rationale or the underpinning was that you want more participation, and I don't think that that necessarily, is causal there. Like if you, that may not solve the participation problem
So-
if that's the issue.
Fair, except for part of it is to avoid there being a multi-day town meeting in the spring where you get attenuation of participation. A lot of people aren't willing to come for a second night, and typically the second night is where a lot of the substance stuff happens, as opposed to the budget process, which has to happen the first night. So part of it as well is, recognition that people can't devote 2 nights in a row, or sometimes even 3 nights in a row, to a really long warrant. This is not something that's unusual. I just want towns all the time throughout the Commonwealth have fairly regular fall town meetings to deal with non-budgetary stuff.
Are those representative towns or of towns like ours? where
No,
they have
I mean,
representative
some of
towns?
them are where they've actually standardized a fall town meeting as part of their, whether they have a town charter or they have special act, and they've actually split their annual meeting into 2 parts. But many towns consistently hold fall town meetings just because they have so much to get done. If the public is aware of the fact that it's going to happen annually, and that then the Springtown meeting isn't going to be so overloaded, it may induce more people to come out. So again, do we know that for a fact? No, but we're trying to throw as many ideas at you as possible to induce more participation, because as we indicated, one of the things that consistently we heard from the public was town meeting is really hard to be a part of.
And I don't know this, but I'm asking, you can't do them on Zoom, is that right? We found that you
representative town meetings can,
you have to be in
we
person.
can't.
Well, I'll just say that I find this a reasonable thing for us to do, given that what it would mean then is that the select board would have to go through the process of determining, when they want to open the warrant and when they're going to close it, and just repeat the process that we did recently for this upcoming Springtown meeting. And then as noted, we can, if there aren't any warrants or there are not enough warrants to make it reasonable to have a fall town meeting, we just vote not to have one. I do share though a little bit of, or I guess I wish there was more that we could be thinking about doing to encourage participation. I do, I think it might be helpful just in terms of openness and, not feeling rushed in the spring to get something ready, to have that opportunity to consider putting forth a warrant for a fall town meeting. I don't know that it's going to address, though, people coming, because even on the first night of a town meeting, unless there's something really controversial, we have to work pretty hard to get a quorum when it's a non-COVID year.
Sure, and I don't think we were saying any one of these is the silver bullet to increase participation. It was more of here's a bunch of ideas that may, on the margins, whether singularly or in combination, increase that participation.
I have to say, as when I read this, ensure the earlier access to the warrant, and you talked about how most people, don't have the time or the inclination to go to all the hearings beforehand. I'm wondering if if we should, in the warrant, also have, let's say, if there's a budget hearing. Because there's that fine line between, being, getting that accurate information into the warrant and changing it between then and town meeting. But if you publish that, let's say the budget in the warrant, and then had the hearing after the people got that warrant in their mailbox, and that's Zoom meetings, people would be could more easily then go to that hearing. And then, if there were some changes that resulted from, the result of that hearing, then that would be changed.
Sure.
In the motion, but I'm just wondering, did you guys talk about that at all? And should we think about including a calendar of hearings with our warrants?
I don't know if we talked about that in detail.
Well, it is late, but that's why I'm saying.
This is just, I will be very clear, my personal feeling is that the people that show up at town meeting are the people that tend to show up at other meetings because they tend to be very actively involved and they have the time and the wherewithal to do so. And so if you want people to be able to go to town meeting that don't have the time, it's not about whether like, I don't know if they would have the ability to, or time to go to the budget meeting anyway. You want them to have the information, my feeling is you want them to have all the information they need to be able to participate in town meeting without having to do anything else other than have the warrant in time to show up at town meeting. I mean, technically, it's the legislature. They shouldn't have to go to executive session meetings in order to participate in the legislative function. And that's just my feeling, though, because I don't think we discussed that in detail.
Okay.
I would say, I mean, this has been the conundrum as long as I've been involved in town government here. That, like I said with the bylaw, the town meeting to me is the end result. It's baked by the time of town meeting. And some people may say, well, rigged, but that's not really the case. But the true debate, the meaningful debate happens way earlier. And I've struggled personally, and it remains a problem to get people to understand that if they really feel that there's an issue that they want to have an impact on, let's say it's the school expenses. That, oh, we spend too much of our, getting at the very end when everything's in the $36 million budget, no, I don't like that. That's not really, in my mind, a good way to express an opinion of objection. I think if you already know, and you should know it well before town meeting, that an issue for you, and you mentioned it here, is not enough transparency in the budget or too much being spent on X or Y, then, we have work to do to make it clear when those things are covered. But somehow, in my opinion, we need to get that message to citizens that the best way for them to have a meaningful voice in that piece of the process is to go to that part of the budget process or that hearing and not at town meeting. Because what happens at town meeting is it occasionally devolves into people expressing opinions, which are largely uninformed, and maybe some of it's because they don't have the advanced material, but it's at the very, very end when all that stuff has happened. So again, I'm just expressing a personal opinion that we have more work to do to try to get people to understand the entirety of the process and get them weigh-in points that are targeted to the things they want. And those are not things that they suddenly wake up on April 3rd, say, oh, this is going to be covered. They're covered in the mosquito for a full year. They should know which items are things of interest, and then we should help them go to those meetings. I've been to hundreds of meetings in my time in Carlisle, and this is like the most people we would ever have. Usually it's like 2.
Except 40 bees. I've been
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah.
Or deer. Well, there's 3 things.
There are dogs, deer.
Dogs, there's deer. And
Yeah.
Well, you do have this recommendation to incorporate public comments to us, and I think it was directed towards the select board policy planning, but I'm wondering if we're talking about that as well.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering if that's where we could have, we have public comment at the beginning of each meeting, but we don't respond to it because that's part of our policy, but maybe there should be a quarterly public meeting where we're not the ones that talk, or we do, but it's a two-way conversation then with the people who are putting input. And would that help? And I think maybe it might. So that's something that I think we should.
Can I? Sorry, I can't help it. So some of the things are constricted by law. So what you're talking about, Kate, would be very helpful, but you have to notice people in order to make sure that they can come and
It's a hearing.
talk, as we heard in tonight's
Yeah.
the public comment. Additionally, there is a state law that says you have to post minutes. It's the open meeting law. So you don't need a bylaw, you just need to do it.
And it doesn't say you have to post
Hold on,
them.
yeah, you have to
No,
have. the
I read
minutes
it just
done.
recently. It does
They
not say you post them. It says you have to take them, you have to
So, and not to,
prove them
Yeah.
within 30 days or 3 meetings, whichever is longer.
They have
But you
to-
don't have
yeah.
to post them.
They have to be approved and they have to be accessible if anyone requests them of the chair. There is no obligation that they be given to the town clerk.
That's right.
so one of the things that I did want to mention here is, so the authority of a town comes from federal government through the state government to the towns and corporation. So the part of the conversation needs to be, there is this idea in towns that we can decide how we run a town. That's not true. If you don't organize yourself the way you want to be organized, then you default to the town's statutes. So a lot of the way that Carlisle is run is based off of Massachusetts general law. So in a sense, if you don't produce an organizing document or agree on your structure, then you are essentially told what to do if you follow it. So the idea of passing a bylaw or a charter is the idea that you're going to say, this is how we do things, and we're codifying it. And that still has to be reviewed by the state and passed either through a home rule charter or through bylaw review. So a lot of the things that are being discussed here, the reason for having a financial process is not to say who has the authority to do what or who has the power to do what. It's to make it transparent and clear. So if someone wants to participate in the budget process, they know this is when the budget is presented. This is when the hearing is. This is how the budget is developed. Those structures allow people to participate more. But when a town has been doing things for a long time, it's hard, as David's pointed out, only certain people have been involved in things for a long time. So it's hard to agree on what our structure is going to be. It's not unique to Carlisle. I doing this in my own hometown where had 2 hours of debate on town meeting floor about what the town administrator could or could not do and why that would change the 350 years of history in the town. But without stating it, you will find that it's factioned, and then you have difficulty coordinating, which causes problems with things like IT.
So what are you saying?
Yeah.
Give
Yes.
us the quick little version of what you, like, what do you recommend?
Yeah, what do you?
To decide what you want to do. So the budget process is not who's in charge of the budget process, it's how we want budgets.
But isn't that what we were saying? Like, we're gonna try the process and then we should, if we need to, address it through a bylaw. What you're pointing out, I think, is what I said less eloquently, which is if we determine that a bylaw change or a new bylaw is needed to codify a process which we've now trialed and we think works, then that's what we do, right?
Correct, but I think it needs to be explicit in discussing these bylaw changes that you're not changing the town, you're stating publicly, this is what we want to be.
Right.
And that it's a nuance, but it's important in the
No, I agree.
discussion.
I should point out, let me point out on, one of Aubrey's missions is going to be a pretty thorough onboarding. We recognize, and people have heard me say this, that we're a high volunteer town, and a lot of us sitting here today, you know, have years and years of town experience. We kind of forgot what we don't know, but many new people come in and they don't have no idea about taking minutes, posting minutes, having, you know, we do have OML training, but beyond that, we don't have a lot of training, and Aubrey's going to be taking that on. So I think one of the goals we have is to have just raise the general awareness of level of awareness of what it takes to be a committee or a board member, how you do it, how you take minutes, how you post them, what's appropriate and not appropriate. Should you entertain public comments? Do you engage in the dialogue? Do you put your agenda, you know, basic things that we can all do better at. And so I look forward to us being better at that.
So I just want to be sure though, Ryan, that you weren't saying that our having a policy of minutes being posted, not only just taken and approved and kept by the chair, would have anything to do with, would have any conflict with any of, you know, either federal or state authorities.
Well, the Attorney General will decide that when you pass the bylaw, but it's only half the battle.
We do,
You
we
can
need,
pass
I
all
guess
the-
my question is, do we need to pass a bylaw in order to do this? Could we not just have a select board policy that our committees that we appoint shall post their minutes with the town clerk within, you know, 30 days or 3 meetings, whichever is longer.
And we're reviewing charters right now, of
Right.
all these, and we can add that in as a.
So is there any reason why we can't just do that right off the bat?
No, but there are second and third order effects. So one of them David stated, which is people need the training, which
Yeah,
needs a
that's-
resource like
yes.
Aubrey. The second piece is you have volunteers. You also need to keep the volunteers and you need to properly staff things. So the reason why it's not done typically is not diabolical. It's that it's a lot of work and that work is expensive.
Is it work for the clerk, you're saying?
Yes.
No, well, our admins.
Or add.
Or our
Ad-
admins,
Do we
yeah.
admin?
We have to admin these things.
Yeah,
So-
got it. Okay.
So I
but-
can interject and say, it literally every time we emailed minutes to the town clerk's office.
Yeah.
They posted them within minutes.
Yep.
Right.
It wasn't a burden on them. They did, in fact, they were like, they would say, okay, next time, can you do it slightly differently in terms of the name of the file? So they didn't have to change that.
Right.
What's interesting is if you go on the town clerk's website, there are certain boards and committees where the minutes are religiously posted continuously. And there are some where they don't have minutes posted for years.
Well, it's
So-
Training and it's
Well,
admin.
no, because this is not about whether the minutes have been completed. This is whether they're readily accessible by the public. So the point is I'm sure those committees have done their minutes, but they're just, or maybe they haven't. I'm giving them a benefit of the doubt. So I'm not gonna,
But Brian, the point is the same. It's training, which we're gonna do, and it's admin support. These are volunteers and they may or may not take minutes. And they may not, I mean, I was on FinCom for many years. We took them, we hand wrote them in a book and whoever was there volunteered. So we have to do better at that. But then I agree, it's not the, town clerk is not the limiting feature. Madam Chair, we're at 7:50.
Yes, I'm noting that too. So, there's a lot more to discuss in this report. And I know at the beginning, Kate and David were both saying, and I agree, I'm sure Travis does, and if Nathan was here, he would too, that we as a select board need to then go back through all of this and figure out what action steps do we, or sort of develop, maybe it's David's Excel spreadsheet, right? But look at the recommendations and make some decisions about what is possible to do or makes sense to do, and then figure out in what way, what's appropriate for town meeting, what's something that can be a policy change, et cetera. So I just want to reiterate again our appreciation to the task force. This is an enormous amount of work, and you've provided us a lot of very detailed suggestions, which I know it was a little rocky at times, but the proof will be obviously in what happens next. But I will tell you that at least as the chair between now and next June, I'm very committed to making sure we figure out what those action steps are going to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
All right, so let's move ahead. I see that we have a number of members from the Environmental Sustainability Committee here, and Debbie Bentley is the chair of the committee. And I see that online, Christina is here, Christina Christodolopoulos and Glenn Reed, Bob Zog, who else? Let's see. And Susan Thomas, our sustainability coordinator, is on. And then Debbie, are you in the room there? Yes, you are. Great. And so Debbie does have a PowerPoint to share, and I will turn it over to her then.
Yes, if you can just wait for a minute. It's been 2 and a bit years since I was in this room. So, and I have a new computer that
Okay.
doesn't know the password, which it used to, of course.
Well, even then, you have to always manually do it when you're a guest here.
All right, okay.
So from the standpoint of the committee, the
was
select
great.
board, the PowerPoint that we're going to see is just slightly updated from what was in our packets, I understand.
Yes, we wordsmithed some things and there were some spelling errors and a few things like that.
But fundamentally, it's
Those, but I
the
figured-
same, I believe. Is that correct, Debbie?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
fundamental.
Okay, so there's a lot here, and we have, given this a half an hour. So again, I know you could use much more time than that, but we'll have to, maybe if we could do the presentation, what do you think, in 10 minutes or so?
I'm aiming for that, so I'm gonna.
Okay, that would be great. And then and my understanding is that this is in sort of following up the charge that the select board gave in its initial charter for the Environmental Sustainability Committee. And so you're
That's the
coming
old
back
one.
Oh,
with,
that's the old one.
a first cut at a work plan and a proposed budget.
Okay, the technology is beyond me at the moment. And
Brian can page it.
so we're gonna go with the old one and I'm gonna read the new one. So I'll just,
Okay.
you're gonna just have to work on that one. So, thank you very much for having us as our committee has been, I need to call our meeting to order for my committee. So I just wanted to do that. Our committee's been started really in the middle of September. So we're presenting to you the work that we have done on the work plan and the budget as requested by the mission. So these are the points that are in the green and on the PowerPoint presentation. It's not quite going down, but never mind. I think, yeah. So they're the green. So this is producing an annual operating budget and plan for a long-term funding of staff to support the committee's work, and an initial work plan by December 2022. And we did it by 2 days, I think. So go to the next slide. The route to sustainability, what we started, how the committee started was we started based from the master plan. We're a committee that has been established because of the master plan. We also had the path to zero emissions report and an environmental policies that exist in town. So we have designed a work plan for action and collecting data, and with actionable goals with a timeline. Now, those are the items that are highlighted in green, and then we will talk about later about how we have to go forward with record keeping data and reporting and evaluation and analysis. We have 8 years to get to a 50% reduction in our greenhouse gases from 1990. That's the state mandate. And it was actually, I think it was backed up by the climate action bill from 2021. So we have a lot of work to do. Our committee didn't hang around. We've been, if I go to the next slide. What we have been doing since September is we have prepared this work plan and budget. We are planning a major day, a sort of festival day called the Route to Sustainability Day on Earth Day, which is in 22nd of April next year. We're already reaching out to various people to help be a part of this. We've applied for 2 grants already, and in actual fact, I've just drafted a 3rd one this afternoon. We've been attending lots and lots of webinars. There is so much information coming out from the state and from the federal government. And in addition to that, we've also been making sure like the school and the library know when the webinars are directed for them. And they have both attended. They were very enthusiastic that they had this opportunity to learn more about how to reduce their carbon. And in addition, we've also been starting to review things that are happening in town hall, in particular that might come across our remit, like the Greeno barn removal and long-term capital planning. What is the effect of sustainability policy on these issues? And in addition, we've actually, Sue Thomas, our sustainability coordinator, has brought us up to date with our annual reporting to green communities, which is phenomenal. So we go to the next slide. We divided the work plan into 3 areas with 3 goals. The first goal is about reducing carbon and emissions and energy use, and that's divided into transportation and the built environment. The second goal is about protecting the environment, which we've broken into 2 areas called land use and the natural environment. And the third one is enacting policy. And obviously it's municipal funding, laws, and outreach. If you go to the next slide, we're focusing, when you look at Carlisle's carbon footprint, it's the residents who actually have a much larger carbon footprint than the town buildings and the town. So we are focusing our action areas on educating and reaching out to the residents and helping them to reduce their carbon footprint. Carlisle residents have a 40% larger carbon footprint than the average resident in Massachusetts. We have a long way to go, but we have also, we're a smart, motivated town and we can get there. So just this, so goal 1 particularly focuses on reducing our carbon footprint. If we go to the next slide. So in the very detailed plan that we sent to you, you can see that everything relates back to the master plan, and in some cases also relates back to the hazard mitigation plan. So the brackets actually relate back to the master plan. So you can see we have followed the requirements of the master plan and the actions that are needed. Occasionally there were things that weren't mentioned in the master plan, but we have added into because they actually are quite important. So we have, and you can see with on these, we have really focused on residential, and really, you know, there are 9 actions for residential to reduce their carbon footprints. So this is, we're really focusing on this. There are some actions that, when we talk actions the municipality can take, they're very much actions rather than policy. Just to explain the subtle difference between why are the municipal not in policy. You go to the next slide. This is an interesting graph because it shows you how much land is green. It's not built on in Carlisle. It's a vast amount. But all the 2 little gray areas are the bits that are accounting for our carbon emissions. But so it's very important that we are great stewards of the land. If you go to the next slide. This is the work plan for the second goal, which is protecting the natural environment. And again, we have looked at the land use and we're focusing on residential and bringing everyone up to speed of all the issues that they have to look in and act on to be good stewards of the land. We go to the next slide. The work plan 3 is probably the most complex, but what I wanted to emphasize when we're talking about, we're assisting the town. We're not imposing on the town. We're assisting the town to update its policy and procedures to be more sustainable. And it has to be a group effort. It can't just be one committee that you're relying on. So as you'll see on the top, it's municipal and it's got a gray box and a black box. That's our black box is our committee. The gray is the other committees. But there's also a line that connects them all through to the 4th hierarchical action items, because anything we do, it has to come in with all the other committees, whatever the action relates to, has to be on board. They have to have agreed to it, because there's no point, we'll just end up in a stalemate. There is one action item which is it's GMP02, which I wanted to highlight. It's on my slide. It's in the municipal master plan part, and that is one where we really need to have a much bigger or longer discussion with the select board and the town administration to establish how we design a plan which will show how we will reduce our carbon, because it is to do with long-term caps. It's to do with a lot of, what is going to happen, where the school is going. There is a lot there. It's not just something that this committee could just do in an action plan. So that will take another meeting, which I would like to set up maybe for the new year, to actually talk about how do we execute that particular action item. That does require to track carbon emissions, to make sure people are achieving their goals, to help them to achieve their goals. Does require us to, a dedicated staff person. We have history of trying to do it on an all voluntary basis, and it hasn't been as effective as it should have been. And this is why we really wanted to emphasize this is why it needs another meeting just to discuss this one action item and to plan for it. I don't think our committee have the bandwidth in the next 7 months to do this. So let's plan for it. Let's organize it. Let's work out what are the resources we need to deal with this. If you go to the next slide. So what are we going to do in the next 7 months? We're going to promote sustainable lifestyles to the residents. We're going to organize this Route to Sustainability Day, which we hope all the other committees will come in and join in with us to promote and talk about what they're doing. Everybody's been working on these issues, but let's all talk about it and share it with the town. We've got to craft the environmental sustainability policy. We have new building codes starting January 1st. The town has the option to opt into the new specialized stretch code at town meetings. We have to prepare the slides, which actually we are preparing the slides, and educate the town on what does that mean and what are the impacts of that. We're going to respond to the municipal actions and budget planning as they come up. We're liaising with other committees and departments, and we're applying for grants. We're applying for as many grants as we can find. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is our budget. We have money left over we've inherited money from the Energy Task Force. But we felt that and we have a grant funded sustainability coordinator for this year, for the next until June. We searched how much Old Home Day cost and how much the music festival cost, and so we have a budget of $8,000 for the Route to Sustainability Day. This is less than Old Home Day and less than the music festival, but we felt if we don't have that budget or don't allow for that, we won't be successful, and we really need to be successful because this is our kickoff thing, or kickoff event. So we are going to apply for an ARPA grant. The pathway to net zero was written just before COVID. All the events were cancelled that we had planned to educate the town about the pathway. They were all cancelled, so it's a legitimate way of applying for funding. We go to we've gone to the next year. We put together numbers. This is a half-time post we have asked for. We know this is something that's under review in the town administration and with FinScom, but you have to know the realistic numbers that we have come up with. If you go to the next slide. So the issues we're facing, we have to do a lot of outreach. We've decided that we'll probably go for a temporary web page because we have to get a lot of information out fast. And it's quicker for us to probably have a temporary web page that's linked to our town web page, if that's okay, you have to tell us, and which we can get the information up faster than maybe asking town staff to do it. We have a Zoom account, so now we can have workshops. We have a dedicated member of staff until June. But, as I said before, this is a coordinated effort. We have to look at getting everyone on board with focusing on climate and sustainability. The biggest issue is how do you value what this committee does? How do you value your future? Because that's what we're planning for. And it's an issue that everyone is facing. We value, we only understand the issue about septic systems when they fail and there's cost so much to replace, but when they're functioning fine, we don't really worry about them. So these are the sort of things we talk about, how do you actually value what we're doing? And our budget, our mission is, I said big in this slide. I actually think it's enormous. I don't think we can do it all together. It has to be a coordinated effort, but it's a big mission and it requires a realistic budget. And we are, as I say, we're going after every grant we can find that we can actually execute. I think that's one of the things we look at is is this a grant that we can actually follow through with all the requirements of the grant before we apply for it? So if they want up certain reports afterwards, can our committee manage that? There's not a lot of time. As I said, we've got 8 years to do a lot of work. We have, unfortunately, we've just lost one of our committee members. She's decided to step down. And so we need 2 more committee members, and we need a lot more volunteers and helpers. You know, even if people can just help for a little bit, that's fantastic. We'll find a way to put them to good use. We go to the next slide.
Debbie, we should try to wrap up. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we need to collect data. This is a list of all the data we need, and the slide, the final slide, if you go to the next slide, thank you very much, is our route to sustainability day. This is the very basic plan. We've reached out to most of the people. The fire chief is really on board. The police are going to go into the fire station. The school are on board, even though they'll be on holiday, on vacation at that period. We can definitely use the car park. So the library are on board. So all the key members are on board for this route to sustainability day. Okay, final slide. There we go. And so I'm opening up to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. There's a lot there. A lot there.
Boy, I'm impressed with how efficiently you guys worked and and how much work you got done. I'm gobsmacked.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a huge amount. Really one of the most comprehensive actually tables I've ever seen, but so my worry is just that there's no prioritization. There's just way too much to be done in this period of time. So how are you going to go about prioritizing?
We are prioritizing based on at the moment the new specialized stretch code, which is has a town meeting issue. So we realize that you have to educate people before you take anything to town meeting, as you were mentioning beforehand. So we're working on that, and we should have a presentation ready to start going around town committees very soon. So that's one of the things we're doing. The route to sustainability day is also very, very key. So that's another thing. Getting the website up is very key. So those are the 3 things. Responding to municipal actions. If you could stop doing anything, that would be really good, because that would give us more time to concentrate on the other things. But that's not going to happen. So we're going to have to respond. We're going to have to work very hard, is the answer.
Right, but I think I like that you picked out 3. I mean, I think it's much better to get a few things accomplished than start lots of things and have them half accomplished. So you mentioned that you'd like to see us again and talk in more detail, and I think that's appropriate. My advice is that focus really on the things you can get done in this period, particularly, as you mentioned, Debbie, educating people on if and I have no idea what the stretch goal actually is, but I can imagine it's going to be a subject of a lot of debate. And so getting that material out early, along with the lines of what our prior meeting was just discussing, would be really important.
Yeah. The new building code is quite revolutionary.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we did have a fall town meeting, as we discussed in our previous discussion, if that would give you some slack, give us more time to do the education. You would already have had your April Sustainability Day, where you could already start introducing it and getting more volunteers on board, hopefully through that.
Yes, I don't deny that. The issue with the specialized stretch code is that you have to start it either on the 1st of June or the 1st of the 1st of January after the vote. You have to have 6 months. So if you have a fall meeting, then you actually get delayed. You can't start it in January. You get delayed to the next June.
Might be a good thing, right?
Well,
Not environmentally, but procedurally.
Well, yeah, but environmentally, the reason that we're pushing to go this fast is because it affects it has a substantial impact on our carbon footprint.
So, on that topic, I would say that, we've already opened the warrant for the Springtown meeting. And if you're saying that we wouldn't be able, unless we took it up then, if we took it up and it passed, we could implement it January of 2025, 24, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, and otherwise we would be waiting until
June,
June of 2024.
July, yeah.
Or July, yeah. So I think it would be worth trying to give enough of an outline of what's involved in the stretch code to then be able to submit it as a potential warrant article, and then have the conversation again with us soon. And I would involve the planning board and maybe the zoning board or whoever you think the relevant committees are, and really look at, is this something it's realistic to try to work on and educate people about in time for a Springtown meeting, or should we wait?
Right.
Have people with more knowledge participate in the discussion about the timeline.
We have the draft warrant ready placeholder warrant ready to go. We're still waiting for the wording from Green Communities, the actual wording.
Yeah.
But I think, so there's two components to these things. There's, having enough time to plan a proper educational phase to make people aware of, be really crisp about what you're asking and people understand in Q&A and all that. But there's a huge piece that's building advocacy. And I can tell you from sitting on regional school committee where we've gotten one hybrid bus, maybe we're on our second hybrid bus, even with state grants. From sitting in this committee where we are waiting for the first electric cruiser. When we get to dollars and cents, you will be surprised how reactionary and not forward thinking the town can be. So all I'm hearing is things are going to be expensive, not the least of which is perhaps the 24 budget to have a sustainability coordinator. So I caution you not to underestimate, beyond preparing materials, how much outreach, and I mean retail outreach, like coffees where you educate people, because there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction that it just costs too much. I'm sure you're.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have had to take things to the town meeting before. So.
Yeah. And so again, going too early is shooting at the king and missing.
Yeah,
and then it
that's
goes
what
away.
that's what
That's
I'm
why
concerned.
I think
Yes.
what we'll
Right.
do is we'll bring our slides to a meeting and then we can get a reaction. I think that's the best way to do it. And then test the water. As I say, it's a placeholder warrant. And then the select board are the ones who ultimately would decide whether to proceed or not.
Yeah, and then the other big, thing just coming up, and we'll get into this more in the budget process, but I don't know if other members of the select board want to comment at all upon the notion of putting more resources into our, staff resources into sustainability work of this kind going into FY24.
What do you mean by staff? Are you talking about the position of sustainability coordinator?
Well, or whatever we want it to be. There's a proposal in this report about, I think, is it $60,000, Bob, that's in here for a staff position,
There's a.
Yeah.
for
minor-
staff time?
Yes, 60.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah, that's what we're talking, right? So that's the
Yeah.
sustainability coordinator, right? Did I misunderstand that?
no, that's what it could be, or, it's money to have a staff person who's
Right.
working on these issues. Yeah, and
Yeah.
currently we have a sustainability coordinator that's funded by the grant.
Right, but that grant runs out, is that?
Correct,
Yes.
the end of June.
Right now, we only have a quarter of a full-time, right?
No, we have a half.
We have a
We
half.
do have a
She's
full
only
half,
showing
okay.
3/4 of it.
Yeah, why are you showing,
Because she's only showing half a fiscal year.
For
because we only had a half a year.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's,
And so it would still be a half.
Complicated.
well,
It would still be a half, but over the full
yes,
year.
it would be, yeah. Okay,
I mean, we may want to just wait and discuss this as we get further into budget issues. I am conscious of the time also.
yeah,
Ryan, are the is the first search firm here? For
Yes.
the
Yes, I have them lined up. They understand that the timing could be off, so.
Yeah, okay. Any last closing comments from select board members or a member of the Energy Sustainability Committee?
Barney, what's the timing? Because you and I and Ryan have to
Yeah.
plan this, so what's the recommended timing for us to reconvene? Because, you know, the timeline towards town meeting is marching on.
Right. Well, reconvene on the stretch code or
Well, I
reconvene.
think what I'm hearing is reconvene with ESC on on two things, really. First is what items would come in front of, you know, what would a warrant look like for warrants for
Yep.
town meeting? And secondly, then I guess, is it a spring or a fall? I mean, but if it, so
Yeah,
even to just answer that question, spring or fall, you have to plan for spring. We may decide
yeah.
right,
it's too rushed and push it to fall,
right.
but we need to slot it in,
Yeah. So
I think, in
Debbie,
January.
yeah. So Debbie, how soon do you think you could prepare and provide something to us to have that conversation?
Relatively quickly, we've got the slides are 3/4.
Yeah,
there.
so we don't have room, I wouldn't say on the December meeting. We have
No.
one meeting in
No, it
December.
won't be- it
Maybe
won't
in
be December.
January, David.
It has,
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'd
Okay.
have to be sooner in January than later due to my personal commitments.
Sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Yeah, this is a lot of good work and boy, you're biting off a lot. And Christina, I know you didn't make any, comment about the sustainability day, but I know you're a key figure in moving that forward. So I know we're all looking forward to that. Sounds like a really great event involving a lot of people in town, which will be terrific.
Well, just one thing I would like to ask our committee, since I just saw the application get to ARPA. And, ARPA makes a recommendation, but if I knew the sense of the select board before, ARPA talked about it, we could maybe make this faster so that they would have access to the funds sooner.
So Kate, what's the actual proposal?
Oh, now,
Or Christina, do you want to, I'm not sure who put it in, but
Well, we asked for 8,000.
okay.
yes, I have a one go for it.
Yeah, I think it's very worthwhile.
I think it fits with our master plan goals too, and our goals overall for the select board. And I think it's a reasonable amount of money.
That's great.
I would, as a final comment, say, because if you were here for the town governance task force, so make sure you submit your minutes or post
We're
your.
very good at this.
All right.
Don't worry. We even have somebody taking minutes right now.
Excellent, thank you.
Oh, which reminds me, so then Debbie, you should formally close your meeting.
All right, yes, so I move to adjourn the joint meeting with the select board.
They opened. That's-
All second?
Side too.
Okay, I adjourn.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
All right, well, so Ryan, I'll turn it over to you to introduce the first firm that we're talking with tonight about the police chief search.
All right, thank you, Madam Virtual Chair. So tonight we are going to hear from two firms, just to remind the public and the board, the evaluation of the RFPs is already complete. So Public Safety Consultants was deemed the most advantageous and also the lowest price proposal submitted. However, one of the criteria the board had was to conduct a public interview. That would be an important part of the evaluation criteria. So understanding that, we have Chief Wayne Sampson from Public Safety Consultants. I also spoke with Chief Russ Stevens and I will turn it over to public safety consultants. The idea is they would give you 5 minutes or so and then be there for Q&A. So
What's the
Chief
muttering
Sampson,
going
you're
on
up.
in the background?
Would you like me to start?
Hold on one second.
Oh, my.
Let's see this here.
Well, while you're waiting, Wayne, hi, I'm Barney Arnold, and in the room there,
You seem to be muted.
oh, I do?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I muted
good.
everybody.
Oh, it's muted, everybody.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if they mute us.
Looks unmuted.
Chief Sampson, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. now
Okay,
we can
so
hear
I
you.
was saying 5 minutes for a quick presentation and then Q&A from the board, please.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak to you. We understand how critical this process is for you, and how you want your consultant to be very engaged with the community, town officials, and really get the best possible candidate for the future of your community. And that's what we do. We spend a lot of time finding out, working with you very closely. This is not our decision, it's your decision, but we walk you through the entire process and we make it as relevant to your community as possible. Quick history, we've been in business for over 15 years here in Massachusetts. We have worked in over 150 Massachusetts communities. We've done over 400 of these assessments. And quite honestly, in the last couple of years, we've lost count of the number of police chief and fire chief assessments we're doing because there's so many have retired. We have done a number of chief searches, national searches, where we work with citizen groups. So we're very familiar with that. We like to spend a lot of time with the citizen group, if you choose to do that, so that we get an understanding of what the role is and what our role is and what their expectation is. And this is all driven by town officials because you make those decisions and we work within the scope of that. So that being said, we've given the town a list of communities that we've worked in and where we've done searches before. We invite you to contact any of those people and they will tell you that we go out of our way to give you that personal touch and work with you and make sure you get a good product at the end.
Thank you.
Great. Can I ask just, so thank you, Chief Sampson. We do have a committee that we're going to be setting up for this, the Police Chief Screening Committee. Tell me how will it work structurally with your firm? Who will interact with that committee? Will that be you or how does that work internally?
So it will be myself and Chief Stevens. Chief Stevens will be a direct contact on a daily basis with the town. He had a family obligation this evening and was unable to attend this meeting. So once you select the members of that committee, we will discuss with town officials what you want their role to be. And then we coordinate with them. We like to meet with them so that they get to meet us and ask a lot of questions. And then, as you can tell from our proposal, we generally have a very broad 5-point plan that we put forward to all communities. And we say, we can do any one of these things that you want us to do. It's kind of menu driven, but you might like some of those ideas and you might not like some of the others. So we're flexible enough that whatever you need for your community, that's what we're going to provide to you. Working with the committee, we will have them as involved as you want them to be. As the town administrators, this is your decision, what you want their role to be.
But that'll be with an interface with you or with Chief Stevens, is that right? Or
That will be with both of us and
Okay.
the appropriate town officials.
okay,
That's what it should be anyway. Now, when I say appropriate town officials, you may delegate to the town administrator and have him handle these processes, and that's fine with us.
So, hi, Chief Sampson. Thanks for being here tonight. So I wondered about the two things that you mentioned in your proposal about a citizen survey and then a police department climate survey. And I'm
Yes.
just interested in your experience, when you've done it like a citizen survey, it looked to me like that, if I read this right in your proposal, that you would involve us or our, what we're calling our screening committee, in developing some questions. But typically, what have you learned when you do a citizen survey? How much does that really influence what kind of an advertisement you put out there?
Well, it does not. First of all, when we do that citizen survey and the internal police department survey,
Yeah.
what we get back for answers might not be what town officials thought some issues were, or you might learn of some issues out there that you were not aware of. Now, that doesn't affect our advertisement. What it does affect are the exercises that we develop that are dedicated to your community. If there's something going on in the community or something going on in the police department, we develop an exercise on that so as to test the candidates on how they're going to solve these problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And how do you do this citizen survey? Is this done electronically or?
Well, we would provide it electronically, and we would work with the town. We can post it on your website. It can be sent out to, if you have a list, a town server list of
Yeah.
residents that want these, we can send them out like that. Or if somebody wants to contact us, we can send it out by mail.
And you do the tallying of the surveys?
Yes, we would do that.
Yeah.
If you want us to do that, we will do that. Yes,
Yeah. And that's all included in the cost?
that's correct.
Yeah, okay. And then the other question I had is just more broadly, what are you seeing going on in Massachusetts in terms of openings for police chiefs and potential candidates?
So Massachusetts has had over 150 police chiefs retire in the past 18 months. 18 to 24 months. It's been a huge turnover. So what we're seeing is that a lot of the long-term number 2 people in charge in these departments have already been promoted. They stay in their own community, or the pool has shrunk for quality candidates. What we're seeing is a lot of younger supervisors now applying for these jobs that weren't there before.
And has that been a good thing? I mean, what's your feeling about that? Opening it up to, younger people to take on more leadership roles?
Sure. So it concerns us that some of these candidates don't have a lot of experience, but it's a new world out there in policing and in society. And we are finding that a lot of these candidates are much better educated. They bring a different level of experience to the table, and they are more accessible and adaptable to reaching out to the younger members of our community. And I can say that because I'm a senior citizen. They bring a different view than my generation does. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. And one of the things we do is we really have a 3-tiered approach when we do the testing in our questions. Everything is based on this 3-tiered approach. We look at the community, statewide issues, and national issues. We want to make sure that candidates are very well versed, not only in what the issues are, but how to solve those problems. Because we tell every single police chief out there, any department in this state is only one call away from being on national headlines. And our candidates have to be prepared for that. So that's why we test them on those issues.
One other follow-up question, then sorry, I'll let other folks
Sure.
speak, but so one thing that I think we're all committed to on the select board, but have been particularly cognizant of in the last year or so, when we've begun a process of doing some more hiring in Carlisle, is a real desire to have more diversity on
Yes.
the staff that we hire. And so I'm interested in your how you approach that. And if we were to say as a town that, and again, I'm speaking for myself at this point, but if we were to say, as a select board, we definitely want to have in the interview pool, at least the first cut, candidates of color. Is that something you think that you could do?
We absolutely encourage that. We have assessors that are of color, minorities, women. And one of the things that we do is, as we get our pool of candidates, we make sure that our assessors reflect the pool of candidates. If we have a woman or if we have a minority, we guarantee you that we're going to have an assessor that demonstrates that the pool of candidates. We take social justice as a very important issue right now, and we've done that for several years. We actually have an African-American assessor that helps us write exercises based on his experiences going through the profession, and they're very dramatic. They're very dramatic because they're real life scenarios.
Thank you. Other select board members?
I think you asked a lot of good questions, Barney.
Yep.
I don't know if. We
No,
all.
those were excellent.
I think so.
All right. Chief Sampson, thank you for your time. I don't get to kick police chiefs out very often, so I am going to boot you.
Thank you very much. Sure.
Thank you
leave.
very much, Chief. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you
Good
joining
luck.
us. Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
We do have to talk about what we want.
Well, maybe after
In
the
committee.
next one. Yeah.
It's on the agenda.
Yes.
All right, so for members of the board, our second interviewee tonight is BadgeQuest Inc., another highly respected consulting firm in the state of Massachusetts who did perform well on our analysis. So we are joined by Dylan Cogswell. Dylan, I'm not sure if you're a chief, but if you are, I apologize for not using your title.
Nope.
And then Chief Robert Pomeroy as well. We can't see either of you, but we can hear you. And what we're asking for is a 5-minute presentation. We have read your proposals and then a Q&A from our board if you're willing. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having us. My name is Dylan Cogswell. I'm not a chief, but I've been doing this public safety consulting for about 6 years now, working for BadgeQuest. And just this year, I became president. And BadgeQuest has been in business since 2001. And we've been, and with me today, of course, is Chief Robert Pomeroy. He would be my lead consultant on this job if we were to be awarded the contract. And, we've done hundreds of these chief processes and many assessment center processes. We have a lot of experience. We have great assessors. We've developed a library of very good exercises on the assessment center side. And I know you guys already have the proposals. You guys have our list of references, which I encourage you guys to look into. But I guess I just wanted to take the opportunity to give a quick run through of what a process would look like. So we start off, posting a specifically tailored advertisement to local and national websites. We also reach out to our list of contacts, extensive list of contacts, and we'll leave that up for about 30 days, get as many applicants as we can, and we can discuss those with the committee, try to narrow that down. and decide who's going to move on to a step 2, which is a narrative question that we will analyze. We'll go over that with the committee as well, try to narrow down the pool even further, decide who we want to invite for an interview. The committee would be in charge of doing the interviews of the individuals that make it onto that level. And then from there, we decide who we want to invite to an assessment center, which an assessment center, it's an all-day process consisting of simulated exercises tailored to your community, and includes things like an on-site written narrative or a simulated public meeting, employee issues, citizen issues, situational scenarios. These are all tailored to your community. And we'll also do reference checks at this point before inviting people to the assessment center. And then, you know, these individuals are graded by anonymously by a team of highly qualified assessors on case apps that we pick out that are appropriate for the town as well. And then we also offer background checks for finalists. So that's a quick rundown. And I know that you guys already have the proposals, you have a list of references. That's my spiel. I'll let you guys ask questions. Do I still have audio here?
Barney,
Barney.
go Barney.
Want me to go ahead? Okay. Well, hi there. I'm Barney Arnold, one of the members of the select board. Yeah, well, just a couple questions for you. So first, generally, what's your sense of the landscape in Massachusetts now in terms of, police chief openings and qualified candidates? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, if I could jump in here, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, hi. Yeah.
I just got my video working. I had grandchildren here the other day and they were playing with the computer, so.
At least you don't look like a cat. So,
Okay,
So-
hi. Well, you're Chief Pomeroy, right?
Yes, retired, yes.
Hi.
So
Okay.
there have been a tremendous amount of police chief retirements over the last 18 months in Massachusetts. So there's been a tremendous amount of openings. Over the past several years, I'd say there has been a diminished number of applicants for these positions. Typically for a town like Carlisle, maybe 10 years ago, we might have 60 or 70 applicants initially. Today, I think it would probably be more in the range of 25 or 30. So the number of applicants has diminished. However, we have been very successful in getting very good qualified candidates. When you take a look at our references list, I don't think you're going to find another company that has done as many police chief searches as we have. And you may not know this, but we actually did Carlisle search back in 2011 when I think the town administrator was Mr. Goddard.
That's right.
And so recently we just completed Bourne and we did Weston for the second time. We've done Weston twice, and Weston I think is has a lot of similarities to Carlisle.
So tell me, in terms of those candidates, we have recently been doing some hiring in town, and I think all of us on the board are really committed to trying to hire more people that will provide us more diversity and people of color working in our town. And I'd like to know sort of how you approach that today and what your success has been and how you think about that.
How we approach it is when we advertise, there are certain publications that are tailored to diverse applicants. So we advertise in those publications. How successful have we been? Not very. And the reason is you are not alone. There are a tremendous amount of communities that are looking for more diverse candidates. And quite frankly, there are not that many diverse candidates out there that are looking for police chief positions in New England. We have had some diverse candidates. We have had some success. We did 2 processes with Chief James Hicks You may know is current chief in Natick, who's a minority chief. But there are very few, quite frankly, there are very few candidates. And I hear this from every community we go to. They say we'd like more diversity among the applicants, and there just isn't that much diversity in the applicant ranks.
Mhm. Okay. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, we are too. I
Yeah.
mean, there's some tremendous opportunities that would be terrific. And, in general, though, like I said, there's been a severe drop in the number of applicants for the police chief positions generally anyway.
Now, I believe in your proposal that you included some information about sort of getting information from residents, as well as potentially doing some kind of polling of the surveying of the police department. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we like to do a resident survey. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be something that can be done online. Sometimes communities would like to have an open forum where people could come and speak. We've done that as well. So we do want the community to have some input. But one of the things that we also offer, and I think is really important, is the department survey as well. We want to get some input from the department members as to what they're looking for in a chief. And really, when we design those questions, I think it's analogous to a mini management study. We're looking for things that the department members believe they do very well, and maybe some areas that need improvement. And that really helps us look for the candidates that could address those issues.
And what do you find from the surveys that you do with residents? How does that guide your process?
Well, for example, the town of Weston, I think, is typical as for many non-urban communities for the type of police chief they're looking for. They want someone who's accessible. They want someone who's friendly, approachable, who is visible, who participates in whether it's family days or local, any type of local events. They want a chief that's visible and approachable, someone that they can talk to. That's what we find residents are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else from the select board?
Yeah, I do have a question, David Modell. Given the diminished pool of candidates, do you guys look out of state or out of region, or?
Yes, we do. We advertise in those venues, but I think the advantage that you have with a company like ours is where we have done an extensive amount of work in police chief recruitments throughout New England. We have a tremendous reach throughout the states, so that we're able to reach into Maine and New Hampshire and Connecticut for some quality candidates, and we've been very successful doing that. Matter of fact, you were successful with your last chief coming from Nashua, New Hampshire, which is a great department with a great reputation.
Any others? All right, well, thank you for joining us tonight.
Well,
for having us.
Typically we are not the lowest price vendor for any process, but I can guarantee you that we believe we are the best. And I don't say that lightly. We have an incredible array of consultants that work with us. And I think if you hire us, what you're getting is a tremendous bench of experience.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you, Dylan and Chief Pomeroy. I'm going to put you back in the waiting room so the board can deliberate. Thank you for your time
Okay.
tonight. We appreciate
Thank
the
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Are we clear here, Ryan? Are they both off the Zoom?
Yes, it's a public meeting, so they are allowed to be here, but all parties agreed to let you deliberate. So
Oh.
they are not here.
Somebody's got a volume.
Yeah,
Mute it.
You want to mute?
Said Tom, no, what are
Tom?
you guys? Tom, are you?
are you on?
Tom's working.
There we go.
Okay.
No,
Okay. Or just your sound off, not mute, Robin.
yeah, it's not, yeah, your
It's not
sound off.
volume.
You're- Okay,
They both.
no,
Well,
Where are we, gang?
Barney, they just muted the room.
Yeah. I wonder if they think, I don't think they meant to do that.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, now we can.
Let me repeat my statement.
Yeah,
So they
please
both
do.
they both seemed eminently qualified. And they actually have very similar process. My question was to Ryan about whether we need a compelling reason to pick a higher bidder over a lower bidder, and Ryan was about to answer.
Okay,
so-
thanks.
You're correct in that you would need a compelling reason. However, the board did identify optionally interviewing the candidates as a prime criteria. So that could rank someone as more advantageous. You can select someone that's more advantageous over cost if you think that's in the best interest of the town. But it would have to be overwhelming is too strong, but you'd have to side with one over the other.
Which I personally don't have that strong of.
Yeah, it's hard in that short a time frame, but
yes, it is.
I didn't have I certainly didn't feel that Badge Quest was, stronger in some way than the public safety consultants. I'm sorry that the project man or the person that'll be the administrator, if we chose PSC, it's Wayne Sampson, right? But no, we spoke to Chief Sampson, but
We did.
it's
And he's Chief
Steve-
Stevens.
Stevens is going to be the actual administrator, but this is, you feel like you're sort of stereotyping people, just based on how they come across. I sort of preferred PSC, just his, I don't know, a little more, maybe a little more straightforward and direct and not as much polish, maybe. I don't know. But that's very
I
subjective.
wouldn't have said that.
I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah,
no,
I don't think I would have said that either.
Okay.
But they were very comparable. They
Yeah.
seemed honest, they spoke honestly, they gave similar information. The only thing I would say, which surprises me actually, because on paper, I think PSC definitely put together a stronger proposal, more detailed, more process oriented.
Yeah.
But Badge Quest seemed plenty process oriented. The one thing that Badge Quest identified, and we didn't ask that question at PSC, is a strong out-of-state network. And given
Yeah.
the state, given the condition, the employment condition that both of them outlined,
Yeah.
we may be wanting to look out of state or even out of region to the pool of candidates. And I don't know the reach of PSC. Do you, Ryan? Do they have a similar broad reach?
I would want to ask them directly.
That may be a follow-up question. I really feel like we're not the only community, right, that's looking for a chief, and I do take the point that, so all the assistant chiefs are already soaked up probably, so now you're at people who are probably very high quality potential, but green. And, so maybe we really do need to broaden the geographical search, and that might be important at the end of the day.
Although I don't think it's, I don't know if I'd describe it as green, but I'm just wondering if we could do really well with a chief that we bring in that may not have as many years of experience, but is, on his or her way up, and smart and, you know, a fast learner, so that the sort of, you know, the thing you can't teach is the sort of day-to-day experience, but that somebody who will quickly learn from, you know, a few mistakes that are going to be inevitable, but is not already, you know, kind of at the top of the of his or her career, and so might be able to attract somebody, because it is a really, I think we're an attractive town in many ways, and we are paying a decent salary. That having somebody less experienced could work out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think Ryan articulated that a while ago. I'm just saying, if the candidate pool is such that, or we decide that it's not particularly important to us to get somebody who is already a chief. We're open to somebody who is not a chief. That's fine.
Right.
But then if the pool of people who are not a chief, the best of those, all the best of those, all the Ryans, you know, or not even Ryan, but junior Ryan, or all the Aubreys, people who are not yet at the level of that, are already been recruited. Now you're at the next layer, which is not to say they're not good, but they're just even that much farther away from being ready. And I guess I would ask Ryan, because you have quite a bit of chain of command. This is the one job, maybe the one other job besides TA, where I think chain of command experience is really important.
Yeah.
As
Mhm.
compared with, you know, a town planner. I don't want to take that out of context, but it's a different type of job.
Mhm.
So I'd like your opinion from your military experience about, say you do take somebody who's green in that leadership way, but has a lot of potential. What kind of learning curve does one expect?
So you could definitely set with the screening committee what level of command the candidates have experience from. So do you want to draw from a sergeant pool, lieutenant pool,
Yeah.
captain pool, or chief pool? I think you'll get a diversity of candidates because of the approaches of these two communities. I take what was said during the interview of the idea that someone without chief experience might be more open to things like post and other important future
Mhm.
requirements that are coming. So I don't necessarily fear a chief that doesn't have that specific experience. You do want to make sure that you vet the candidates, that they go through the proper assessment center, in that you are very clear with your expectations. But I did take that point that the policing is changing, and I imagine the board is looking for a chief that's going to be here for 5 to 10 years. It's going to change even more in the next group. So you might want someone that is focused on what is policing looking like 5 to 20 years from now.
I think we're back to the figuring out between the two groups, and you know, I thought that they both were highly qualified. I think it comes down to the only issue that we didn't really explore was on one of them, whether they have the, you know, breadth, you know, of being able to do that. But on paper, at least everything I read, they're very interchangeable in many ways. In fact, they came from they came from Badge Quest, or, you know, so I mean, I think based on what I've saw tonight and based on everything I read in our packet, I would think they're pretty comparable, and
I can make a motion. If you're done deliberating.
I'm done deliberating.
Okay, I'll make the motion. Excuse me, my back. I move that we authorize the town administrator to contract with PSC for our chief of police search.
Second.
Any more discussion?
No, just for the public though, should we state the two amounts or not? Is that? Or doesn't that even relevant? I mean,
Oh, the contract amounts?
yeah.
I'm just frantically scrolling to it. Hold
Yeah,
on.
it was.
Well, I think what I wrote down
Yes.
was, for PSC, it's $12,000 plus $2,500 for the background check. And that's for, I think that was that for 4 candidates? And then it was more if it was 5 or 6?
Yeah, about a $2,000 jump for
Yeah.
6.
And then for Badge Quest, I wrote down it was 17,843 plus 3,000, I think, per candidate for the background check. Could that be right?
Correct.
Okay,
So I think that's
That's
significant. So
Yeah, that's really
have
significant, yes.
we
And
seconded?
I finally found it. He seconded, but we're in discussion, so I may have to amend my motion. And I guess the question is, do we want 6 candidates or 4? And where, and okay, so, and these 6 candidates are candidates that would be,
Is this material to picking which committee or?
no, it's material to
The amount we're
to
allocating.
the amount we're allocating in this in this motion. And I think we have to decide 4 or 6 candidates. 5 or,
Do we need to do that at this point?
well, so not
I
to
wonder if that
exceed.
could be the next conversation with them when they come back and we talk about our goals.
Okay, so then the amount not to exceed $16,700, which,
I don't know why you would
I
put
don't
that
think-
constraint on this motion.
so, well,
I don't think
because
we need-
Travis was asking if we should put the number in the motion.
And I
So
think I
I'm
said-
offering a motion,
I don't think we need it.
we don't need
I
it.
would-
Okay, so. as-
Sorry.
I think it was just for information.
I was on information in our deliberation just because I don't think
Okay.
people in the public really focus on that. And I want to make the point that we are actually going with the lower cost. firm.
Okay. All right. So
So
there's.
does
motion
your
on-
original
the
motion still
table.
stand?
The original motion still stands and it's been
Okay, and we have a
seconded.
second. So if there's no more discussion, let's take a roll call vote on this. Arnold, I.
Modell, I got a promotion to number 2.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Yeah, I had to quickly in my
Ryan,
head.
thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations to PS.
Yes, thank you to them. So Ryan, you will follow up with them and I guess we have not did we have time on the, well, we'll get to the draft agenda later, won't we? I think we had some follow-up on our December select board meeting agenda.
Correct.
We can do the next conversation that we need to have with them about crafting the sort of what our goals are and directions to the screening committee.
We'll be discussing the chief of police probably at every meeting for the next couple months. So
Okay, all right, great.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's move on to the
9:05.
Transfer Station Action Committee. Welcome, Tom Balata, and I see that Carrie Patel is on the Zoom call. Tom, or any other members of the,
Rob and Laura here.
okay,
Rob here
great.
and Laura Snowden.
Yeah, oh, great. Well, thank you all for being here. And yeah, why don't you just move right into the presentation, Tom, about,
Well, let me see if I can share the screen. No, we're getting ready to do it.
that's great.
is it what you submitted to the packet, Tom?
Say again?
Is it what you?
Same
sub-
one, yeah.
All right, I can do it.
You got it on? Okay, great. Okay, great. No, that's the presentation. It's the PowerPoint presentation. I want to email you.
Give me 1 second, please.
The one with the green picture on the front.
You want to move the screen again? So that
Oh,
Tom can see. what
Well,
he's
I have a
talking
copy of
about.
it here, so I can.
I know, but you don't know. You want-
trust me, I might black out it. Don't.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Safety type of power.
What are you talking about, David?
Never mind.
One.
This is not how I would join you.
try not to kill yourself.
All right, here we go.
All right.
All right, so since we completed the launch of the updated transfer station back in October, we thought it'd be a good time to update you folks and also talk about our 2023 plans. And in particular, focus on what we'd like to do with respect to local haulers and C&D. So I'll try and be fairly brief on the update and the 23 plans, maybe 5-10 minutes. Go on a lot of questioning and discussion of the local hauler stuff. So in terms of, let's go to the next slide. Good.
Just for the public, would you let people know what C&D stands for?
Oh, sure, construction and demolition debris. Okay, so
And then,
in
excuse
terms
me,
of what
Tom.
we've done,
one second, Tom, and then I know you have a motion that you want us to consider. So let's make sure we, get to that with enough time for discussion on it.
Definitely. I definitely plan to
Okay,
move quickly through the update.
Great, thank you.
Okay, in terms of what we've done so far, it's important to understand that what we've done is set the table for solid waste reduction. We haven't reduced anything yet. So basically, we've made some changes to transport station operations, policy, et cetera, intended to encourage recycling and get solid waste reduction in time, but we actually haven't reduced it yet. So we've set the stage. In 2023, we basically want to move on now to actually produce results. And so basically, look at what we've done and the various elements of it intended to reduce solid waste, hone in on those and make that occur. So in terms of what we've done so far, there were a bunch of transfer station physical changes. Everybody saw new signage throughout. Got the trailers painted, which was unplanned. That was nice to see done. Gary replaced and painted a couple of the sheds. Didn't get the third one yet, but that'll happen sometime soon. Moved some stuff around, got rid of the oil tank, repainted the swap shop. One of the actual pleasant things, the swap shop actually seems to be performing better than we expected. It needs some additional attention, but a lot of folks thought that was going to be real difficult to maintain, and that is produced. It is better now, and it can be a lot better if we do a few more things. So that's basically the transfer station changes. Next slide, please. In terms of one of the most important things in the ongoing program is community education and engagement. We've begun that process with some mosquito coverage and some other things, but basically, most important thing we're going to do going forward is community engagement education. Our challenge is significant. And take, for example, textile recycling. I don't know how many times I've told folks the details of that. It takes a lot of time to sink in that you can take non-usable textiles in there. For example, folks just seem really resistant to that because it's not what they're used to with charities. Food scraps are worse than that because food scraps, it's not just understanding what you can do, but there's a resistance to food scrap recycling. That does not exist with textile recycling. So we've got to overcome that, and we've got some ideas on how to do that. So we've got our challenges there, but we're going to be honing in on education, one of those at a time. Textiles, then food scraps, and really trying to get some results there. We had a few recyclable specific initiatives, reorganization of the swap shop, and that's again stage one. There's more to come there. We added the redeemables containers. That's not working so far. That was done really to help Liz out. It turns out there's too much contamination in that, and it's not contamination. There is some, salad containers, obviously, but the real problem is she only accepts a very limited amount of mass redeemable containers, and so there's lots of mass redeemable containers in those bins which she does not accept. So we've got some ideas on how to deal with that. And then you folks adopted a new regulation which really sets the table for the local hauler strategy and C&D down the road. Next slide, please. And with respect to DEP, a couple things happened. One is we did finally report our numbers correctly. And as a result, I'm happy to report that Carlisle is no longer red with a black dot on this chart. There's 25 communities that are, we're not one of them. We're right now at about midpoint, about 100 in the communities. And if we're really fairly represented with the appropriate non-use of commercial haulers in town, we'd really be near the top of that group, but at least we're off the bad category. The other thing we did is we did assist DEP in filing for their recycling dividend program funds, and I believe that we're going to get that grant very soon if it hasn't occurred already. We're notified that it's coming extremely soon. So that's the update in terms of what we've done. And next slide, please. So as I mentioned, in terms of 2023, our efforts really are to make everything happen. And the first slide here really is the elements of the charge you folks gave us, all of which are ongoing. Again, item number one, education is very important, the most important. We're going to begin periodic reporting of results, probably January 1. We'll be actually publishing each month, recyclable percentages, solid waste percentages, so we can measure progress as it occurs, hopefully. We will continue to maintain awareness of all grant opportunities and work with the DEP to file for those. Assist with hazardous waste days. We'd like to be more active with reuse opportunities, especially for large items with charitable organizations. One resident used to do that, has done it for the last 20 years, has asked us to take that on, and something we really should take on and do in a much larger perspective anyway. We're going to look at other recycling initiatives such as glass crushing. As you're probably all aware, the recycling market died last month, bottom dropped out of it, and almost every recyclable now costs us money instead of generating revenue. And that's transitory. That will eventually get back to normal. We have no idea when. Could be 6 months, a year, whatever. But it revives the possibility, for example, you want to get involved in some glass crushing or something, you begin to deal with some of these recyclables a different way. And most importantly, bring private haulers into compliance with the state laws and our regulations. Next slide, please. We've identified about a few other new items that weren't the original charge based upon the work we've done last year. We're going to have some members create a guide to running large events in town. There's probably 20 or 30 large events in town run by churches, schools, the town, where there's hundreds of people are involved, lots of food, and we'd like to make those more environmentally friendly. So we're going to provide some guides to do that. Looking for opportunities for regionalization. For example, on the glass crushing, we were thwarted on that last year because we had to come up with an operator for the glass crusher in Groton. I spoke with Sue and the Sustainability Committee. Westford has a similar problem. Other communities have a similar problem. Perhaps we can collectively identify an operator who could then crush glass for a bunch of communities. Nice thing about that is not just glass, it's porcelain, ceramics, it's all similar products. So it's actually quite a bit of tonnage involved. But we'll look at other things as well. We want to look at the possibility of a town-sponsored curbside collection program. Collaboration with the efforts of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. And another thing came up was how the sticker fund is dealt with. The sticker fund is going to take a hit right now because of the recycling market fallout. But beyond that, there's some inconsistencies in the way that's done. For example, some recycling revenue comes in there, some doesn't, some goes in the general fund. And it depends on what vendor you use. For example, we used to use one vendor for cardboard, paper, and all the other recyclables. And as a result, the sticker fund never had any expense come in because there was a net positive there, and the net positive went to the general fund. Gary recently switched that and took cardboard and mixed paper to one vendor, and the other three, which are losing money, to remain at that first vendor. So now sticker fund will get a bill it never used to get. It used to get, and the general fund would get more revenue, although now it's getting less because of the market dropping out. But eventually, when it restabilizes, we should really think about how that's done. So that's the update, and that's the 2023 plan. Let's move, if we're ready, next slide to this private hauler stuff. I've got a few introductory slides just to bring us back to the discussion where we left it off about a year ago. Allowing commercial use of a transfer station is extraordinarily rare. It is possible we are the only community in Massachusetts that still does it. I'm not sure of that, but it's certainly countable on one hand, and it's probably a couple fingers, if that. The most recent community that did it was Dover, which is demographically the most similar community to Carlisle in the state. There are about 5,000 people, probably very close to us in annual income. They had 30% of their users using local private haulers, whereas we have about 10%. They went cold turkey about 10 years ago and just stopped it, and they no longer allowed it. And the day that happened, their tonnage handled by the transfer station went down from 2,000 tons to 1,000 tons overnight, cut in half, which just echoed what we observed, which is that the private hauler use is much more trash per house than, for two reasons. One is recycling isn't happening. That's a part of it. And the other part of it is it's just more trash. So they did that cold turkey, and that's the result they got. We're 10%. We're not expecting to get 50%, but we believe it's around 500 tons. So in excess of 25% of our solid waste is probably coming in from the private haulers. And we did some observation there. And last year we did meet with all three private haulers that existed, talked to them about it. They all said they were recycling, swore they were recycling. We did the observation day, and it just ain't so. I mean, anyone who recycles knows that recycling volume is typically somewhat greater than solid waste volume if you're recycling everything, even accepting food scraps. You look at the bins that you get from all the commercial haulers, and the recycling bin is always overflowing, the other one's not. And it's just not that way. A hauler would come in with 100 bags of trash and half a filled barrel of a few random recyclables, and some did a little more than that, but it's really just not happening. And you can understand it's very difficult. Curbside is associated with single stream recycling, and we don't offer that. And single stream recycling is kind of forced on the folks because you get two bins, and you can't put all your recyclables in the trash bin. You'd have to buy a separate bin. You're not going to do that. Next slide, please. So all local haulers are aware of the recycling requirement. Interestingly enough, they all represented they were doing it, and they understand the state law. That's not a choice. Wellesley is one community which does allow commercial disposal, but they charge for it and make money on it. And they actually have a very intricate system. I mean, you can bring it in sorted, unsorted, different fees for that. You can, and they'll, because they actually have a regional center, and they have excess capacity, so they want trash. Gary Davis, last year was really reluctant to deal with local private haulers. He does understand, I had a chat with him, that we do have to honor state law, so we have no choice in that matter. And we all understand what that means, and there's really two things here. We are covered by the least restrictive category of CMR 19, the state regulation which governs transfer stations. What that means is we don't have to inspect anything. We don't even have to file our plan with the DEP. We have to have it. We have to maintain it somewhere. So if a DEP rep shows up and says, show me your plan, we have to be able to pull it out and show it to him. And our town admin has to certify that we're following the plan and have it. So that's what we have to do. That least category, there's a checkbox there that says we do not allow vehicles with a capacity of greater than 5 cubic yards, with an assumption that pickup trucks are okay and other trucks are not. And that 5 cubic yard, from our observation day, we currently have 500 vehicles a year, about 10 a week, entering the transfer station with capacities greater than that. And, one vehicle comes in once in a while, nobody's going to buy. DP is very flexible on enforcement, but we're allowing 500 vehicles. That seems like an untenable position. So basically, there's two things we're not adhering to with state law and in our own regulation. One is the vehicle size, which is probably the easier of the two. And the other is recycling is mandatory. Our plan is supposed to indicate how we enforce recycling for all users. Now, our position for direct depositors is very defensible. We have education, signage, binage, and people are doing it to 80%, so which is as good as anybody. So if DEP came in and saw that, they'd be happy with what we're doing for direct depositors. We are not enforcing it in any way, shape, or form for local private haulers. They're coming in with dump trucks full of trash and tiny bit of recyclables. Next slide, please. There's a couple of other issues. There is no practical way for us to know whether an incoming load contains trash from other towns. They say it doesn't, but who knows? How can we possibly enforce that? We can't confirm compliance with the state waste ban. We don't do that now. There's no control which prevent new local hauls from coming in. With the recycled market bottoming out, now it's more expensive for everybody to dispose of stuff. So a company like Orphis, who's a commercial recycling or waste management, probably is going to have to bump up their rate pretty soon. Our local hauls won't have to do that because we're bearing that cost here in Carlisle. So you could actually see an increase in instead of 10%, it could be 20%. So there's a bunch of things that are out of our control in addition to violation of law. Next slide, please. And there's one other flip thing. We do recognize that these are local businesses that have been in town for a long time. And so we want to give them a chance to comply with the laws. So one option would be let's stop doing it as Dover did. The option we're recommending is to try and work with them to come into compliance with the state laws, get the recycling going, and failing that, then to not allow them to dump. That's where we're at. Next slide, please. So basically, TSAC believes that we've got to set a date for legal compliance, and we're suggesting July 1 of 2023. And so basically what we're going to be looking for the board tonight or in some subsequent meeting is to identify if we support that strategy, in which case we will communicate with the 3 private haulers, indicate that by July 1 of 23, they must come into compliance. And there are 2 elements to that. One is they must cease using vehicles that are larger than a pickup truck. One of them already does. One of the large ones actually uses pickup trucks and he's fine. One of them uses all dump trucks and the other used to use a dump truck. He actually gave his business to another person right now, and I'm not sure what he's using, but I believe it's still a dump truck. So number one is they have to, in 6 months, stop doing that. The second thing is, and I discussed this with Gary, vehicles coming into the transfer station would have to be divided into 2 physical places with some sort of partition, half for recyclables, half for solid waste. And the attendant will look at that and just make a, does this look roughly 50-50 or, and if so, they'll be allowed to dump. They come in with a load with 70% solid waste and 30% recyclables, it would not be allowed to dump. So that's it. Now, that's going to be hard for them to do. There's no question, because they don't offer single stream recycling. So either their customers would have to sort, or they'll have to sort for the customers. So another element to this is that I personally think there's a possibility that they'd be better off to dump elsewhere for a variety of reasons. Then they can take trash from anywhere they want. If there's customers in Borica, Bedford, Acton, locally on their route, they can do that trash. They can offer a wide array of services, cleanouts, whatever. They can dump 6 days a week, not just Tuesday, Wednesday. So there's a lot of advantages. There are cost implications, a cost to dump, but it looks to me like if they were to change their rate by like a couple bucks a week, they probably could cover those costs. And again, there's some business advantages doing it. So I think we ought to find out for them what their dumping costs are, give them, paint that picture, and so, perhaps they'll find that more attractive than to the solving recycling problem. And then we also provide an educational document so that their clients understand that it's state law, they're obligated to honor recycling, as are we. So it's not just something they're doing to cause issues. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, so the other element that is that the Board of Health is the organization in town which actually is authorized to permit private haulers. And the state DEP did actually come out with a form recommending that they be permitted in 2017. And basically what that does is it provides for whatever reporting requirements we want. Usually there's a nominal fee similar to septic haulers, a few $100s a year, something like that. And whatever reporting we want to require, we're suggesting they must provide a list of clients with their sticker numbers, a certification that they are not, bringing in trash from out of town, although we have no way of enforcing that. And we're suggesting the permits would be limited to 3, the existing ones. We don't want to expand it, and that they'd be non-transferable. So in time, it might even go away. So those are the 2 major elements. Go to the next slide. We've got a proposed motion of the select board on this slide, which basically would authorize us to work with the DPW to bring all local private haulers into compliance with the regulations and state laws, and then to work with the Board of Health to create that permitting process. So that's really what we'd like to do. And with that, I throw it open to questions. There's one more slide in C&D, but that's a fairly quick discussion. So let's jump into whatever questions you have on local private haulers.
It's great. And I really like where you're going with this. So I have 2 questions. One is, what is your thought on non-compl? So say this happens, but then you find that they're not complying. What's the penalty?
Well, it basically, as of July 1, what we're saying is, for example, a truck larger than a pickup truck would not be allowed in the transfer station, it would be turned away.
What if, but you're also asking for now you're making the poor guys at transfer station be sort of cops on.
Well, no, basically what would happen with these folks is, myself or Gary, we would talk to there's 3 individuals involved and explain to them that the trucks would not be there. At that point, it's a police matter.
I think the truck is the easy one, like you said, Tom, but let's say they're kind of sort of recycling, sort of not. Is there some teeth in your, like, you get warnings and then you're going to be disqualified and you're done? Like, we got to
that's
be a little stricter.
exactly right. The details that to be worked out, but basically I assume, the guys are not going to be ones to deal with that. That's got to be, and typically there are issues, by the way, that occur like this. I was surprised at how many times Gary has to involve even the police department and stuff there for, not for local private haulers, but just for a resident. And so the intent here would be that this would be a problem for Gary and the TSAC, and we basically communicate with those folks, and eventually they would be not doing it. We want to be reasonable. If folks were complying, and Sue Thomas, for example, mentioned right now it's difficult to buy trucks, I guess because of the supply chain thing. If someone put in an order for a pickup truck and you're not going to get it until September, that we're going to be reasonable.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm saying if there's sort of routine ignoring of it.
Then they'd be warned a couple times and they'd stop. And it would not be intended to be Gary and or one of us communicating with them. My sense is that, we've talked with all these folks. They all understand that they're doing something wrong and they're getting away with it. And until we say stop, they'll keep doing it,
Are the clients aware? The clients?
No. Well, I take it back. Some clients, Kate mentioned that she doesn't think they're recycling and recycles herself.
Right. I do know that my person has different areas in his truck, and I do a lot of recycling, and he puts it in 3 different, or 4 different areas. So at least I know it goes in the truck recycled. I just don't know how it comes out of the
I
truck.
wouldn't say every client knows that recycling is a state law. If they haven't visited a transfer station, they haven't seen the signage, and that we have to educate. That's part of what we need to do is education there.
But having said that, nobody has ever told me, or he certainly has not said, you really, and I'm glad you do it that way because this is how it has to be.
Right.
So obviously that part of it.
That's right. And ultimately how they will sort, the sorting here is different than normal. It's not single stream. Will they allow their clients to put it all in one bin and separate on their truck, or will they give them, that's up to them.
I thought you were talking about mandating like separate things on the truck. Is that not the case?
Yeah, no, the truck's split into 2 halves.
Right.
And one half is recyclables and the other half is solid waste.
Right.
And there's an additional thing there, maybe not a minor point, but which basically says that they must on that side that's recyclables, accept all mandatory waistband items. So cardboard, mixed paper, glass, there must be provision, however they choose to do it. Again, they could have containers which are filled, they could, whatever works for them, but they must do it. The recycling has to be really done. And, we're trying to do it in a way which Gary's folks can actually validate it. Apart from, if you see the truck roughly 50-50, we're along, we've improved a heck of a lot from where we are today. And DP does not expect perfection. If our plan, if our documented plan said this is how we're doing it, I think they'd find that reasonable, just like they do with, they know the direct depositors. They specifically say you don't have to inspect direct deposits. Folks bring in opaque bags and they know you don't know what's in there. And some of it's waistband material. They don't expect you to inspect that because they're looking for 80%. They have these various action thresholds. And as long as you're making a serious effort and you're getting most of it, they're pretty happy. Right now, we're not. Right now, we're basically getting probably 5% of the recyclables from low technology.
Tom, when Dover went cold turkey, there's some people who I presume are using the commercial haulers out of basically laziness, let's say. But there's people like Kate who probably maybe just physically don't want to do it. Like, what do you do with the people who?
Orifice Recycling does serve Carlisle now. So there was one commercial hauler.
Okay.
And they actually have 100 clients in Carlisle. They purchased, there was another outfit, I forget what it was, Barry Landscaper or something used to do it. So they purchase it and they take it out of town. They're a commercial haul. They have
Okay, so that's the option. If somebody physically can't manage the
that's
transfer station.
That's the current option. And they also, by the way, do offer garage service. They have one rate if they pick up on the street with the big machine. They have a separate rate. They'll come down to your garage and pick it up. They also, which is very nice, they offer a third thing, which is organics. They have an orange bucket they'll give you for $18 a month, which will take all organics, not just food scraps, but also leaves and other stuff. So, honestly, I love the transportation myself. If I wasn't using it, I'd go to Orifice in a heartbeat just because getting rid of the organics in the yard. So that's an option. I did mention here that one of our new initiatives for 2023 would be looking at offering potentially another curbside option for folks. Concord right now does two options, which they both contract out to Waste Management. One of which is a pay-T option, but the other which is more of like a recycling kind of option. And in terms of regional opportunities, is there a possibility we could offer something similar? And then residents pay for that. It doesn't cost town anything. And their actual rate is actually better than it's like $300 or $400 a year instead of $500-600 a year. So it's actually an attractive rate. So perhaps we could get into that somehow on a regionalization thing. So it'd be nice if we offered them another option as well. But Orifice is expanding in the Carlisle. They supported 10 western suburbs in Spencer and Natick, and they recently expanded in Atkins, Concord, and Carlisle. So you see them like if you go on Cross Street, for example, and South Street, you'll see some of them some of their bins.
Barney, are you with us?
She's on mute.
Yeah, I'm right here. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I'm right here. And I think unless there's more discussion, we should decide if we're ready to vote on either both parts of the motion together or separate them if we don't want to vote on both tonight, or whether we want to, review it and vote on it at a subsequent meeting.
I could vote too, but the only thing I keep thinking, I thought this with the task force tonight, is we don't really get much community input. And I think it's helpful, because we hear someone present, we have our own judgment, sounds great. And then, we enact something, and does it warrant that? And I'm not saying it does, but I think it's important when you're setting policy and stuff like that to get some input.
Yeah.
Tom, did your task force solicit public input?
No, we have public meetings, but no one ever attends.
Yeah.
And that's true. I get that.
Yeah.
And we're doing our best. And
We did when we were doing our observation days and we were on there, 24/7, we had an opportunity to converse with a lot of folks. And there's certainly a segment of the direct depositor community who's not happy with what they see because they see non-recycling.
I have that. I've had 3 Carlisle residents approach me and say, as a select board member, what are you gonna do about this? I followed a truck that went there and they picked up an Acton and they dumped it in there and
It's really annoying because you're there doing it, you're bringing it,
Right.
separating, you're spending all this thing, and then you
Right.
see, and it is happening, and I mean, some direct deposits do too.
I've
The people are
reportedly by alleging,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't have brought it up to me if they, I mean, I don't know. I think,
Well, no, it's understandable. You're doing something and somebody else isn't, and so.
right,
don't
they
need-
watched it happen and
Yeah,
they said,
yeah.
I can't believe this happened. And let me tell you about it. One of them reported that it was a commercial person picking up, but I don't, again, I'm
Yeah.
just reporting that nobody's testifying, saying,
Yeah.
they saw this, but I'm just saying, that's what I'd heard.
I mean, I do think there's an element of this which is outreach, and that is, as I mentioned here, I think the TSAC needs to communicate with the clients as well, via an educational document, and give them an opportunity to, to discuss.
Clean up their act.
Yeah, this is exactly right. I mean, bottom line is here, we're not in conformance with state law. And it's not like it's something new or we're just tiny bit non-conform. We have 500 trucks coming in that shouldn't be there.
Right.
We have, 100 tons at least of recycled. So this is, I mean, if DEP were to come in here, they'd not be happy. And I don't think we could defend our compliance.
As much as I'd like more input, I think this is in the right direction, is if
Yeah.
I'm, my judgment, at
I
least.
mean, yeah, public input could only add to this, right? We
I
can't,
would think so.
we can't say we don't support being in compliance. Right? The motion says we're gonna get in compliance.
Yeah, right. Okay. Sorry, I'm taking us off tangent.
No, it's a good point. But I'm ready.
Second time, I'm keeping score.
All right,
So is someone ready to make a motion then?
I'm ready.
go for it.
Go for it.
I move that the select board authorize the TSAC 2 work with the DPW to bring all local private haulers who use the Carlisle transfer station into compliance with applicable state and local laws and regulations by July 1st, 2023. And 2, work with the Board of Health to establish a permitting process and regulations for all local private haulers who use the Carlisle transfer station.
Second.
Any more discussion? All right, then let's take a roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Model I.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
The motion carries
Thank you very much
unanimously.
for your support.
Yeah.
Next slide, just a quick one on C and D. This will be quick.
Man, I wasn't ready.
If you lost a slide, I could just speak to it.
Yes.
It's pretty straightforward.
Why don't you just tell us?
I just, oh, there
There
it
it
is.
is.
No, it's the next slide, yeah. So in terms of C and D, if you recall, when the TSTF came up with this complicated proposal at the end of last time, talking about establishing a fee associated with the building permit process and other stuff. At the end, basically, Gary was really very strongly opposed to that, so we dropped that recommendation. We've looked a little bit further. C and D has been on the decline. It is declining. And there's definitely the vast majority of it right now is direct depositors, residents, not commercial. Given all of that, it's our opinion right now that this is a back burner issue, that we ought not to spend time on this today and put it aside. We'll revisit it periodically should anything change. And that's certainly where Gary would like to keep it as well. He feels he has enough tools to diminish commercial C and D. So that's what we'd like to do if you guys are in support of that. There's no motion required. I just want to get a sense if you have a problem with that.
Anybody have any problem with that?
No,
Yeah,
All right, excellent.
great.
Well, once again, thank you very much,
Thank you, guys.
Tom, and the rest of the committee for, the
great
great
work.
work you're doing
Really
and your plans for the future.
Great, thank you.
So I see that the town administrator's report is next, but I also see that, at least I saw at one point that I saw Scott Triola
Yeah.
on the.
Scott
hey,
said-
Tom, can I interrupt you, Barney, just for a second? Just one thought that crosses my mind. I frequently have conundrums about like specific recyclability questions.
Yeah.
I've emailed you some of them, but it would be great if you had sort of maybe a Q&A on you have a homepage on the.
Yes, you do. Yes, he does, yeah.
It would be nice to encourage people to ask these kind of questions. you know, maybe a place where people could ask you questions and you could answer them, because
We did create an email list, and we have about 40 folks now who gave us email understanding the observation. And the education campaign is actually gonna go pretty wide. We're gonna go see in the woods pretty soon. That actually has a good dialogue on your second list already.
okay, yeah, I know that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, yeah, Kate, did you say Scott was, are you there in
Yes,
person?
Scott is here in
Great.
person.
Hi, Scott. Well, welcome. Scott Triola, the chair of the ARPA committee, and then Kate Reed, of course, is also on the ARPA committee. So we're, there are 3 requests that we're considering tonight. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, there are 3 recommendations from the ARPA committee that were provided in the handout. The 3 recommendations include 1, to approve ARPA funds for senior home heating assistance. That's totaling $50,000. 2, approve ARPA funding for town hall records management. That's totaling $100,000. And the 3rd is ARPA funding for town hall reconfiguration, totaling $50,000. And I'm happy to spend a brief amount of time on each. I do believe you are familiar with at least 2 of these requests, so I won't belabor those points, but very quickly on the senior home heating assistance. If you recall back in March, you approved ARPA funds for rental assistance to help seniors in need on fixed incomes. This would be similar in concept to that, but we would be providing economic assistance to homeowners. So it is a completely separate group. These funds, these $50,000 would be put into a pool and they would be split among eligible recipients. And I know Joan has done a lot of work looking at who those eligible recipients would be. And there are very clear criteria for who would qualify for this. And I think her last assessment was that approximately 16 households would benefit from this. So the $50,000 would provide about $3,000 in heating support to 16 households. And that would be for this winter. We had some discussion on a longer term basis. If Carlisle wants to provide ongoing assistance, I believe they are considering a warrant that would look at tax exemption, but that's separate from this. This would really just be targeting this winter. And if this was approved by the select board, I know that Joan would move forward immediately to vet the eligibility in December and begin payments. The payments would be made directly to the heating providers. Those would begin immediately.
Joan's on too, Scott.
Oh, Joan, great. So Joan can answer any specific questions about the mechanics of it, but we do have a process in place for heating assistance that this would just essentially utilize. We would just be putting these additional funds in via the ARPA account. Does anyone have any questions about the first one?
You said there's a process in place. Is it all being utilized right now? Have you maximized what's available?
Joan can speak to that. Joan?
So right now, we have about $750 as a cap for people that request fuel assistance. And that comes from community chest funds, friends funds, and we have a fuel assistance gift account. But with the increases that are happening in the cost of different types of fuel, we don't believe that that's going to meet the need this winter. So this is a new program, and I've developed a new application because we haven't had to have a formal application process. We've been serving sort of the same people year after year, and there are also people that receive a lot of other benefits. But this program would require an application, which I've drafted and created. And so this funding would be supplemental to what we already have.
Other questions on this particular one?
And I think Joan had mentioned one of our questions was, can this amount be used? And I think we all know from our heating bills that I think the typical household heating bill for the winter would be about $5,000. So obviously, if it was less than that, you wouldn't keep the money. This would go directly to the heating assistance. But clearly, there's the heating bills are going up.
So there'd be an eligibility screen, Joan, and then those eligible seniors would submit their bills to you, and you
Exactly.
pay
They have to
vendor?
submit, right. We have to see who their vendor is and how much they owe. And, we may even get an estimate from the vendor on what it would cost for the season. And then we would probably make the payments in segments because we wouldn't want to necessarily put $3,000 in one payment, because what if they moved, or what if something happened, you know, so there would be a process for that. But that's the way we do it now, is we pay the vendors directly, and we submit a bill to the town accountant when we
So
process.
are you seeking to cover 100% of those heating bills, or a percentage that would sort of cover I mean, what's your methodology on that?
Well, I think we would see how many people screened in. And if we know we have $50,000, depending on how many people screened in, we would, you know, allocate the money as fairly as we could. I mean, some people's heating bills are going to be higher than others. If you have oil, it's going to cost more than, you know, if you have a different product. But I don't think anybody would get more than 3,000. So, you know, we'll see how many people are eligible. I think it's going to be 16 households, but we would obviously have to, you know, give everybody an equal chance to apply. So we would be doing some outreach and some publicizing of it. And then, you know, we would take the funds and distribute it among the eligible households.
We want to move the discussion to the other two requests.
Yeah, let's do that.
And the other two requests are from Ryan, and I'm sure he's spoken to you about them. And as select board members, I'm sure you're very familiar with town hall. I mean, these are both, I know as a member of FinCom, these are both topics that come up regularly over the last many years. In terms of record management, obviously, we have a paper problem here. We have records, we don't know where they are. We have records, we don't know what they are. We pay a lot for storage of records. We need to increase our public and our employee access to records, especially given the prevalence of remote work. And so these funds would not are not expected to cover the entirety of the process, but as Ryan discussed with our committee, they would certainly get the ball rolling. They would allow us to begin the process, do an audit, and begin digitization of the records. But this is going to be a long, multi-year project, but one that the town has to undertake and is probably long overdue. Ryan, I don't know if you want to provide any more color to that.
Yeah, I think you're familiar with the town hall reorganization and some simple organizing of teams and furniture additions that will make town hall more efficient. And the records management side, this truly is hopefully a 5-year focus. You could do it all, hire a consultant, bring them in. It would be expensive. It would be worth it, but you also have to continue to operate and build consensus amongst all the departments and boards, especially on the land use side of the house, on how records are going to be stored. So the audit will give us an idea or a scope of the problem, and then organizing the documents will then further show us what could be digitized and what wouldn't. And that's hopefully what these funds would do. We would fully know the problem, assess it, and then we would target specific areas for digitizing, which would come up later. If I had to guess right now, I would say a year or two at a town meeting type warrant saying we can now make these public. But first we have to identify all the problems. So we've already gone up in the attic and pulled those down. We know there's records at the DPW. The schools have also talked to us about their records, right? So it's a big problem.
And the reconfiguration, I mean, we all know some of the challenge of this space for residents, for employees, and town hall is what it is. And I don't think we want to take on another building project in this town. So, working within this space, optimizing it, making it a better workspace for our employees, a better space to access for the public, take advantage of the changes that are going on, and hopefully we'll continue on with hybrid meetings and remote meetings. These are improvements that need to be made for a variety of reasons.
So, Ryan, back to the digitization, the school, in the figure cited, the school records are included as well.
They're not, but they are also facing the same problem. Saying the entirety of the records problem for the town is a massive undertaking. The problem with records is you never start. So this is money to start and move in a direction without overwhelming the staff and having them do nothing but records management.
Any other questions or comments? Are we ready to have a motion?
The,
Well, there's one.
well, the only other piece of information I'll add, just because I know it's asked, and I have a printout here of the projects that have been approved and the amounts. But again, we were, as Carlisle, awarded $1,569,859 in ARPA funding from the federal government. We've received all of that at this point. We've approved $627,000, which is approximately 40% of that total. The requests here today total $200,000. So if these requests are supported, we will have committed approved $827,000. A little more than half of our total, which from my perspective is a pretty good place to be. And a lot of the those funds do include some large projects like the Wilkins HVAC and things of that nature. So I feel very comfortable with where we are in terms of the funds we've approved and the funds we have remaining for the next year and a half to 2 years to approve.
So to date, you'd say what, 80% of those have been for facility management or so?
I was looking at that. I don't know if it's quite 80%. It's the majority of funds have been for capital projects like Wilkins, like the Gleason. You could, if you want to include the floors here and chairs and some infrastructure stuff, that's been, probably 70% of it. The other big bucket has been, Joan's done a tremendous job in terms of bringing forth opportunities like rental assistance, senior assistance. So, that's 100,000 between those two. So that's, 15%, mental health counseling and, some other things. So, I feel like we've spread it around and we continue to look for a variety of ways and a variety of things to put it behind. But yeah, the big numbers have been the capital project, and I would expect that to continue. I think we'll still get little requests, smaller requests relatively here and there. But we're moving past the point of responding to a pandemic, and now we're starting to deal with some of the economic upheaval that's following that. And so, and we know the challenges of the town in terms of what we have in terms of capital projects. So I feel like we've been pursuing that strategy all along, and I imagine we'll continue down this road of, keeping funds in line to do the things we need to do as a town, like the records management. These are things we have to do, but leaving room to provide assistance in certain areas.
I think those are like, I view like 3 different buckets, all of which are pretty worthy. So capital, we just discussed, social needs, obviously. The third bucket, which to me is a record management bucket, is really process improvements that we know to start. So when in that kind of category, just having gone through this town governance review, and we'll do more of that. For example, administrative support for things, or cyber, things with IT that are not strictly speaking capital, but just need to do, right? We just need to step up to
The other thing that was purchased with ARPA funds were the voting,
electronic voting.
electronic voting for the town meeting.
So that's, a good sort of paradigm to look at those 3 buckets.
Yeah, modernization.
Right.
Even down to providing the appropriate equipment in these meeting rooms.
Right. Right, exactly.
Cybersecurity is
It's
an
gonna be
important one.
huge, yeah, right.
And whether that's through ARPA funds or warrant articles or budget requests, we're now entering that phase where they're all going to be moving down a track. And so we'll continue to do our job on the ARPA committee. But now we'll be balancing some of these requests along with, is this a budget? Is this a warrant? The social needs things are separate, and we address those as they come up, but there's still, ample opportunity and a good amount of funds available to do some of these things.
And there's the looming, again, the other thing we met, I don't know if you listened to any of the meeting remotely before you came, but the ESC, the Environmental Sustainment Committee, has a boatload of things to do.
Yeah.
Some of which are staff, but I can see an awful lot of initiatives that we want to do, but they all cost money.
Yeah,
right?
well, one of the ones is the April 22nd day that
You will be, or at least
that
they're gonna.
they
propose
just
it.
sent it in.
Yeah.
And we got it,
Yeah.
last
Well,
night?
they sent it last week. I just sent it out today. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
going to be discussing that at our next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, that's great.
But I think, putting on my FinCom hat really quick, that's going to be an important topic when FinCom meets with the select board to talk about the upcoming budget process.
Mhm.
prioritization, where is that on the select board's priority list relative to some of the other things, initiatives, so.
Right.
Well, ready to vote?
Yeah, we ready for a motion?
The motion, okay,
Are you allowed to vote? You're on the committee.
go ahead, you make the motion.
My first motion, I approve ARPA.
Move.
I move to approve ARPA funds for senior home heating assistance, the amount of $50,000.
May I have a second?
It's you because I'm on the committee.
You
ARPA
are.
committee.
All right, a second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please. Arnold, I.
What I?
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Motion 2, I move that the select board approve ARPA funding for town hall records management in the amount of $100,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Arnold, I.
What I?
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Motion 3, I move that the select board approve ARPA funding for town hall reconfiguration in the amount of $50,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Arnold, I.
What I?
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Hey,
All right, all the motions carried unanimously.
Thank you very
Scott.
much.
Nice to
Thank
see
you,
Nice
Scott.
seeing you. Room looks good.
Yeah, it does. That's-
Money well spent. Joan is ecstatic.
The chair is holding up okay?
Yeah.
Joan, I heard the Mahjong people are worried about the noise, though.
Well, you know,
Clattering of Mahjong tiles and bouncing of.
part of Mahjong is complaining. That's part of the culture of.
Yes,
Mahjong.
yes.
So, thank you. I'm excited that that was approved and it's going to really help people with the winter heating. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joan.
Okay.
All righty, let's then go back to the town administrator's report, please.
Chris Berman.
All right, team, I'll be quick. Recognizing this space, it's been talked about a few times, but we did christen it with a Friendsgiving for the staff, which was nice. Decided to come down and use the floor. There was a lot of excitement about the improvements here in town hall. I'm going to be attending a retrospective and reception for town clerks in Concord and here in Carlisle on December 9th. The board was also invited. This is a chance to not only talk about the process, which is important, but also highlight the good work by our town clerk staff. And then we had a few visitors in town hall last week doing audits, one auditing records in anticipation of tonight's vote. It was free, so I didn't commit any money before you voted. But they're going to give us a proposal on what that audit would look like. And then also the municipal audit, which the board will see in a month or two about the FY22 finances. In terms of human resources, I am almost complete with a full audit, using that word again, of all town employees, positions, and appointing authorities. I'm going to put this in visual documents. It's already been sent to departments to vet. So what is everybody's title? Where does everybody exist? How are they appointed? And what is the structure of the town? So you can see that for upcoming decisions like you heard tonight with the government task force. Included in this is also overlaying the HRS wage study. The finance committee or finance team, sorry, is talking about this right now. How to and it's the movement, the equity movement is not as bad as you would think seeing that report. So I think it can be accomplished in a year or two's budget cycle, but that'll be part of the budget presentation. Aubrey's diving into her role and immediately regretting coming to work with me. She's made an immediate impact. She's actually asking the board tonight for your support on a community compact grant that will secure us funding in order to do succession planning. So that would be, how does the town look to replace employees? This has come up with several departments. Not that we want to replace any of our staff, but what happens when our staff does move on or find other opportunities? I included this right up in my report that you've read. So when we get to the motion section, you would be approving her applying for this grant. We are fairly certain it will be successful and we can start that project immediately. Finance team is looking at the FY24 budget process and reviewing all documents. Next week, we will look at draft 1 of the budget that will go before you in the finance committee on the 13th. It will include a basic level of analysis for you to start the formal process of reviewing each section of the budget with the departments and making prioritizations and decisions. Included in that will be debt analysis, capital analysis, the operating budget, and look at reserves and other spending. The finance team is also recommended 2 policies, OPEB and forecasting, and is looking at another 2 next month to try and get in compliance with our financial policy plan. Jack, Aubrey, and I met about the master plan recommendations as the board instructed us. We are through our process of vetting in a small group where these master plan items would be assigned. We're going to send them out to all the boards and committees to see if they agree or think that they should be moved around. That'll be coming back to this board in January in time for your planned kickoff of the implementation stage of the master plan. Very meaningful work done by Jack. He's a treasure. Shared services study has been put on pause. There was no funds with MAPC. They do believe that this will come back in January. So I do think we should wait until January to see if we can get funding for that. Otherwise, we would have to consider funding it outright, which is something the board might want to do after the second look of grant funding. For procurement, we're still doing small stuff like the Clark room, some town hall upgrades, but the MFC has worked with the engineer and design firm to put the Gleason Public Library roof out to bid, so that we should be getting bids on December 9th, and there'll be more updates coming from the MFC to the board. Getting to action items, looking for the board to support Aubrey's Community Compact Grant application to be submitted upon you approving me to sign it. So that would be action item number 1, Madam Chair.
Okay, so can we have a motion to that effect, please?
Which one is this?
You want to look at page,
action
it's on
items number 1,
163.
community compact grant application. Well, let me ask you why you think we should sign, why you need our approval for this.
Because the Community Compact Grant requires it.
Oh, okay.
Good answer.
Good answer. Because I just wanted to know whether it's because you felt obligated or if there was some other overarching reason. Obviously, there's another overarching reason. So I move that we approve town administrators sign off on the community compact grant application.
May I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please. Arnold, I.
Modell, aye.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
And then Ryan, do you want to describe number 2?
So number 2, again, not overly involved. I did send you a copy of the proposed designer selection procedures policy update. This was last updated over a decade ago. What I'm trying to do is work with town council to procure on-call design and architectural services for the MFC. I've sent them the draft of the RFQ. The town council has advised that we update this policy before we send that RFQ out, just for best practice purposes. So I'm requesting that the board approve this revision that I have worked on, town council has vetted, and we will put that up as our policy, and then should be working to put out this RFQ in time for the holidays and maybe have someone selected by January.
So you didn't.
Brian
give
is-
us oh, go ahead, Barney, sorry.
I was just going to ask, so the procedure that's in the packet, page 165 in the packet, that's the updated version you want us to approve tonight?
Yeah, looking at it, so the Word document items, the revision marks were taken out of it when it was converted to DocuSign, which I didn't catch. But
I think we have to table it because I didn't have any idea what this was.
Okay.
In the packet, and to an earlier comment raised, we didn't really flag it as an item for the public. So what I propose is that you provide the select board with the marked version and, whatever narrative you want about the changes that are necessary.
understood.
And Travis, did MFC look at this already as well, or no?
We have a meeting on Thursday.
Okay, so it would be also helpful that we would get their input as well on this, since they're kind of more directly.
Yep, and I guess, now that
Impacted.
we're starting down this path, we have to consider sustainability. Is there a
Right.
criteria identified that the designer will use green lead, whatever the stuff is, practice. I mean, I don't know enough about this. This is a bigger issue, I think, than just the marking a document.
Okay. So what I would say on that is, we should get a policy on the books, and we should procure a design firm to help us make some of these decisions. Otherwise, we will be continuing to lament in the
Right. But
slowness of capital work.
sure, but I agree with that, but I'm saying, for example, again, you know, in the spirit of ESC, if we're gonna be serious, we have to start putting our money where our mouth is, where we should make it mandatory that the design firms have to prove that they're adopting best, green practice. I mean, there has to be some.
Or at
Made an
least
earlier
give,
point.
right, or at least give, show the options and what they're gonna cost, but
Yeah.
there's clearly, yeah, that's sustainability.
I mean, that's the product of the design, but I mean, just to say which firms you select have to show that they following. That, that we have to start requiring that. If it's a process about how we select things, we have to start always asking the ESC question.
And I guess I have one other question is, where's this document going to live?
Yeah.
Because we have a policy handbook now, and that wasn't in the policy handbook. And it probably doesn't belong in that, but I'm just wondering, yeah, where's it going? Are we gonna have? I know in planning board, for instance, we had the bylaw, and we also have another separate book, the policies and procedures, to deal with it. So I guess, do we have a place where where's this gonna live?
Yeah, so good question, Kate. So all of your policies exist on the select board policy page, which is very difficult to access and not very open. So
Yeah.
as part of the new website design, we will list out all town policies to include personnel policies, bylaws, zoning bylaws.
Okay.
And I do plan to bring all of your policies back in front of you, which will be.
That's
All
right.
That's a whole
Yeah,
separate discussion, but
I
are we gonna adopt a numbering system then?
Sure.
Yeah.
I
All
would
right,
take
well,
just
why don't
for
we-
what they are first.
Yeah, let's,
Got
it sounds like we've agreed to review put this on the next select board agenda.
But in principle, I think you get the idea. We're in favor of this.
Yeah.
We just need to know.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely in favor. We just need to be able to see what the changes are, and also, I think, as David's suggesting, at least have some notion of using, having some requirement to consider, sustainable, what's the right word, elements, I guess, in the building process design.
Point taken. It's a little chicken and egg
Yeah,
because you
it
do want to
is.
get the firm to come in and help you with that, but.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. So staff recognition. I talked about Alan again, but he's been just a force of nature lately. So he's been doing additional hours to help us in here in the Clark Room floor project, as you see here. He'll be painting the floorboards. He's just has more energy than the rest of us. So he definitely deserves credit for all the work he's doing. And I don't know how we'll replace him. So hopefully he never retires. And George Paradises has been helping us in the executive office. One of our productive senior workers. Just wanted to highlight, he helped us get rid of some old documents that we are legally getting rid of that came from the attic, and also covering for Jen in the executive office in totality when we were out, and he brought in a chocolate chip cake, which made him very popular with the staff. And I will throw up the draft agenda.
And I hate to be picky, but you said you're gonna paint the not the
Stain.
you're gonna stain it. or
Stain
just-
it.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Good. I know. I noticed that same thing, Kate.
Yeah, paint would be would be harder to maintain than
We'll
just.
apply the appropriate liquid to the.
Thank you.
floorboard.
Thank you.
All right, so here's the draft agenda, and we just added, well, it'll come in under your TA report, but
Yeah.
the revised policy.
And then what else did we say we wanted on this report earlier?
Well,
There's a whole bunch of things, but I don't think it's for this.
I don't think we need to do it
Upcoming
right.
meeting.
Yeah,
I would say, How packed is it? Well,
Well,
it's quite a bit of stuff, but.
I
Yeah, we
will
may-
tell you that the HPP, the Housing Production Plan,
Yeah.
I am going to be sending to you tomorrow. I just finished proofing it
Yeah.
tonight, and so it's 110 pages, so
Great.
you will have 2 weeks to
Yeah,
read it.
well, we have budget, we have quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah, we do.
And jumping ahead, I believe, given the hour and also the comment from Vanessa Maroney earlier, which is fair. I don't believe we should take up the discussion about the dog hearing now. We should put it on this agenda and clearly. Just to clarify for any 2, 3 people who might still be listening. It was not about, the discussion item is not like a hearing. It's just whether to have a hearing, but still, the
Well,
point I think was taken.
Yeah, but David, I wonder if, I guess I would suggest that, because I think, well, I could be wrong about this, but my sense is from a variety of people that we should hold a hearing. And so the decision to do that, I think we could make tonight. And then, I mean, I agree that we have not done a better job about advertising or letting people know that there is a hearing coming and what it's about. But this is different. This is deciding to hold a hearing, which I think we should do in this case.
Yeah,
I don't know what
I would
people think.
support that.
me
Barney's
too.
idea.
I think
Okay, all right,
we
fair
gotta, I don't want to put this off any longer.
Okay.
Right.
Fair enough, got it.
Okay,
Fine.
so are we ready to jump to that? Are you?
I think so.
I think
Let's
we just
go.
had it. I think we just,
Well, we need a motion
I'm just sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to go ahead and do the dog nuisance motion, we should do that. And then I don't think we need to set the date tonight. We can do that offline and get Jen's help to figure out a time and a date, right? Because
Are we considering two, we have 2 potential hearings, and are we gonna have them together or separate would be the question.
I was
Is that a
thinking the
scheduling
same
issue?
night and just separate them.
Okay, then I move that, where's the thing?
It's page 186.
Oh, sorry. I move that the select board vote to schedule a hearing or hearings for. Well, there's 2 different.
Yeah.
I move that the select board vote to schedule hearings for 2 separate nuisance and or dangerous dogs at the request of the Carlisle Animal Control Officer, and send proper notifications to the owners of the dogs in question, one of which resides on South Street and the other on Nathan Lane.
I second that motion.
Any more discussion?
Well, how are we going to notice this and where? So for the people who are interested in attending these.
Well, we will have to first. We have some work to do, and then we'll
Okay.
schedule the hearing and we'll properly notice it.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and then we can also put something in the mosquito, Kate, and put it on the website
Okay,
when it's happening. I mean, in advance.
all right.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen on our next, this and this.
No,
meeting
it'll be
will
a
not be at our
separately
next one.
scheduled,
It will
It'll
be
be
a
a
separate,
separate
not select.
special
A
meeting
special,
for the select board, just to conduct the 2 hearings.
got it. All right. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. Yes.
I mean, on Christmas Eve, so everybody can
Yes.
attend.
All right, any more
For you.
discussion? Any more discussion? All right, well, then let's vote on it, please. Roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Odell, I.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Excellent, thank you. So let's go back then. We have some appointments to, we have one resignation, and then we need to do the police chief screening committee.
Okay.
Madam Chair, we have 2 resignations. Second
Okay.
one is from Judy
Oh, that's right.
Azarkoff from the ESC.
Thank you, yeah. And that's on page 176. If someone would make the,
I move to accept the resignation of Amy Smack from the Carlisle Recreation Committee, effective immediately. And the resignation of Judy Yasserkoff from
from the ESC.
from the ESC.
Also,
Right.
median as well, right?
And thank them
also
for their
immediately.
service.
Effective immediately, with, yeah, okay. I'll leave it at that, and we can always,
I
With
second.
appreciation for their service.
well,
Appreciation.
this is where I want that, thank you. And this is where I wanted to say, and we appreciate the service that both of these people have given to the town.
They have a second.
Second the motion and also the sentiment. A lot of good work by both of them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Roll call vote then. Arnold, I.
Odell, I.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
All right, that's been accepted. And then let's move on to the filling the community representative position or positions on the police chief screening committee. So just for a quick review then, we have received 6 letters of interest, and the individuals are listed. Matthew Herwick, Jackie Hamilton, Alan Lewis, Luke Oscalillo, Deepa Chungi, and Gina Fox. And at our last meeting, we agreed to extend the deadline to consider some additional letters of interest, which we received. And we also discussed the possibility that we might, instead of having just one community representative, given the interest, we might expand that to more than one. So what I'd like to suggest is we take up the latter thing first. Do we want to have more than one community representative on the committee? And let me just say, for as a reminder for all of us, the other 3 members who have been the other 3 members, though, who are serving on the committee, which we will need to appoint, are Joan Ingersoll, representing the Council on Aging, Kirk Bishop, representing the dispatch department, and representing the police department is, I'm blanking, sorry. Who's that?
Officer Corwin.
Corwin, thank you, Officer Andrew Corwin. So those 3 are set.
And Travis Snell for this.
I'm
select board.
sorry, yeah, and then representing the
Thank you.
select board is Travis Snell. Thank you. I knew I was leaving something out there, something critical. All right, so those 4 have those positions are set. So the question is, do we have 1 more or 2 more?
Well, Barney,
representing the community, or some other number?
At the last meeting, I think I'd recommended, I had supported increasing that number. And I think it makes sense because we want to include more people and, which offers different viewpoints, potentially more diversity. And, I just think it would be beneficial to the community. So, I would advocate that we would have 3 additional, or not additional, but 3 people who are, from the citizens
representing the community.
So our committee would be 7 members.
Okay. David or Kate, how do you feel about that?
I'm okay with it if Travis.
Yeah, I have no problems.
I think it would be helpful. I mean, just, I don't think it's unwieldy with 7. I think maybe
It's fine.
somebody
It's
can't.
fine.
Yeah.
And I think given the interest, that's a good thing. And also, the police chief is obviously serving our community. So having, 3 people representing our community, I think is very reasonable.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I don't think we need to make a motion to do that. I think we can just decide then who.
We need to come up with the 3.
Right,
Person,
the 3.
Why don't I start? If that's, unless you want.
No, I'm happy. It's your
All right.
committee.
I've talked with each of these candidates, and I think just based on my judgment in looking at their applications and their interest, but they're all, bring interesting perspectives and certainly diverse perspectives. I would suggest personally that, or I'd support the 3 would be in no particular order, but is Gina Fox and Deepa Chungi and Matthew Herwick. And
That's what I was gonna pick as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in agreement with that as well.
We all agree.
great.
Make the motion.
So was there anybody that was not in agreement?
Nope.
No, okay, well then, who would like to make a motion then?
I'll
to
make a
approve?
motion.
All right, and I think we should include in it appointing those three and the other four, which we haven't formally appointed, right? We had just agreed who was filling those positions.
Okay.
Okay.
So let,
So I would make them, well, can I make the motion on myself?
Yeah.
Sure.
Someone else want to do it?
yeah,
Oh, okay. I move that we appoint to the Police Chief Screening Committee the following individuals: Travis Snell, representing the Select Board; Joan Ingersoll, representing the Council on Aging and Human Services; the Officer Andrew Corwin, representing the Police Department; and Dispatcher Kirk Bishop, representing the dispatch. And then in addition, we would have three members of the community, and those would be Matthew Herwick of 157 Berry Corner Lane, Deepa Chungi of 45 Virginia Farm Lane, and Gina Fox of 252 Westford Street.
May I have a second?
second,
Any discussion? Excellent. Let's do a roll call vote then. Arnold, I.
Odell, I.
read I.
Snell, aye.
Excellent. That passes unanimously. And I'd just like to say for the record that we really appreciate the letters of interest from all of the community members. And it's a heartening sign to have those people willing to serve. So thank you all. All right. I think we're done with the agenda. The warrants are there if anybody has any questions about them, but otherwise we are ready to adjourn unless someone else has something we need to discuss.
Better not.
Yeah, all
I
right.
move to adjourn the select board meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Arnold,
Aye.
aye.
Odell, I.
Read I.
Snell, aye.
Excellent. And thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you, Aubrey, and whoever's handling the recording tonight. All right, good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
They're doing it remotely now.